What's going on, guys? My name is Aldeniro, and welcome to episode 76 of the Midnight Hour. I'm pretty sure it's episode 76, but it's also the last ever episode of all time in 2016, so we'll see you next year. But it's really good to close out the year with a look back on what happened in that year, because it's an arbitrary amount of time and we use it to define an era. So 2016 is, in the general consensus, a horrible year, and we're all glad to see the back of it because so many terrible things happened. There were unprecedented events such as Brexit, where Britain voted to leave the EU. Donald Trump is now the president of America, but there were also really good things like Leicester City won the Premier League, and probably good things that weren't just that thing. But I think it's so easy to look at things with a sort of a dreary and gloomy outlook when you sort of condense the year into just the bad things that happen, and the fact that we lost celebrities that we couldn't afford to lose, the fact that obviously in the political sphere the world is changing, or at least this feels like it's a very important time, and some of us feel like we're losing some kind of a battle, and it's not always about that. And I want to look at the year in a different light, and I want to discuss particularly just pieces of pop culture that we've enjoyed from this year, and how lucky we are to live in a time where such amazing entertainment is available to us, and that we can just switch off from the things that distract us or the things that make us sad, and we can tune into a whole nother world of like amazing. You can go into like a video game and become a superhero, or you can watch like the Marvel movies that are out, you can watch Star Wars. There are so many amazing things that I wanted to get through and discuss, that naturally there were things that I didn't even get to. So this episode is an alternative take on 2016 and a viewing of the year primarily through the looking glass of pop culture and what was created and produced this year and how it impacted us, and the difference that it made in our lives and things like that. I'm joined today by Santiago from Weird With You, who obviously was in last week's episode, which I know that a lot of you will probably not have heard because I didn't put it on YouTube at first because I didn't have the time. Then I did put it on YouTube, but it got taken down after like a day. So not a lot of people saw it, and then I put it up again and it got taken down again, and then I put it up one final time, so it's lingering now on like 100 views, but I know that more people would have seen it in the meantime. But anyway, if you do want to check it out, it's obviously the video before this video, and I'm pretty sure that you know how to work with stuff like that. But I'm really happy to have Santiago back on the podcast. Unfortunately, Justine didn't have the time, the other co-host from Weird With You, but I really think that this is a really good episode and that you guys will really enjoy our insights on, you know, huge things that happened this year. We start out talking about video games and then move into movies and then eventually into music. I talk a lot about music, and I feel sort of bad when I do because I know that only about like 10% of you care, but I care and I love music, so I talk about music a lot. So I guess that is everything I wanted to say out of the way. If you want to discuss the episode, check out the subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/midnight hour. Check out the iTunes link if you want to listen there. It'll be in the description. If you want to listen on Soundcloud, that too will be linked off in the description. And obviously check out the podcast Weird With You, which will also be in the description, funnily enough. That's where I keep everything these days, is just in the description of the video. It's easier, you know. I feel like it's handy to have things to click on. You don't have to, you know. This is why, I don't know why I do this. Anyway, all the links will be in the description, every single one of them. And I'll talk to you at the end of the episode, and you'll hear my voice throughout the episode. So, with all of that out of the way, enjoy the episode. I'll talk to you guys.
No power in the verse can stop me.
So, I'm joined today by one half of our friends over at the Weird With You podcast. That sounded like a really weird thing to say. I'm joined by Santiago.
It's literally half of my body.
Yeah.
It's my top half and Justine's lower half are here.
And
we
what
just
a whole person
connected.
you've become.
Yeah, it's like a bizarre mix of brains and body parts. I don't know where I'm going with this.
It's almost like a normal human body, but slightly different.
Exactly.
So today we are going to talk about Donald Trump for 2 hours. No, today we're going to talk about the good things of 2016 because it's been such a weird year in the sense that the world has like consciously decided that existence is unbearable and that we are on a downward spiral and there is no way out of it. And I don't subscribe to that notion, and I am continually baffled by the amount of people who think that this is the only year where a bunch of celebrities died. I think that that's
Yes.
strange. I will concede that a lot of them are celebrities that we couldn't really afford to lose. Like, I don't think we have another Prince or another Bowie, in the wings waiting. But people die, and it's sad. And yes, obviously we can mourn them and stuff. But we have to stop saying like, oh, 2016 claims another one. Like, the year itself is not going around murdering people in their sleep. So
Justine and I are going to be talking about this in a future episode of our show, but it's like people personify the year as some sort of malevolent entity that is going around purposefully selecting people that we love and plucking them from this existence, and it's kind of a ridiculous idea. I mean, I get what you're saying. Also, Donald Glover has a joke in his stand up. I think Weirdo, appropriately, was the show that he does it on, and he says something like his parents, I think it's his dad, tells him constantly, like, oh, you kids, like, I feel so bad for you, like, this is the worst time, and he says, like, this isn't the worst time, this is the best time, because, like, before you used to go outside, it's like, don't go outside because it's dark out and you'll die. Like, stuff used to be a lot worse than it is now. I think a lot of it has to do with social media also, right? Like, we're a lot more exposed to the things that are happening. We find out things a lot faster, and when the media machine grabs onto the idea of like trending topics, like that's been a thing that's existed since before Twitter and hashtags, and it's only been amplified, right? So, oh, you like talking about dead celebrities? Well, here's a bunch more that died, and it's like, I don't know. It's exactly like you say. It's a bit. I don't subscribe to it. It's a bit ridiculous to blame the year for something when bad stuff happens all the time.
Yeah. Plus, once you get that idea in your head, it grows and it spreads like a virus, because it gets to a point where people are like, "Oh no, the extra in the background of my favorite movie that drinks a coffee is dead." This year, man. This fucking year. And it's like,
no.
Alright, like, I mean, celebrities die all the time, and that's not to, it sounds like such a harsh thing to say, but
I know, like, this is I was talking about this the other day, it's like, people got engaged this year to the person that they're going to be with for the rest of their life, and like, for them, 2016 wasn't this horrible year, like, for them, that's the beginning of forever. And I'm not saying that everybody who got engaged this year, his relationship is going to last. I hope so, but that's generally not the case. But you know what I mean? It's like, people had like wonderful things that happened in their lives, and I feel it's like almost like making people feel shitty for enjoying 2016 when everybody's crapping on it.
Yeah, plus I absolutely love the idea of someone, like, literally a week ago, like, imagine somebody coming to you and saying, like, dude, you got to check out this George Michael song and just feel the emotion in it. Like, he is so good at nobody would take you seriously if you said that. And now, because he's dead, everybody's like, this fucking guy, man, this is the best music. And it's like, no, it's not that you actually, I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to say that
when he says, "Don't leave me hanging there like a yo-yo," you can just feel that somebody once at some time left him hanging.
Yeah, and
like a yo-yo.
And he was bobbing up and down, powerless against
in
the
life.
String. Yeah, and it's
the current of the universe.
Oh man, this is profound.
The unstoppable tide of time.
Maybe this was a bad year.
Shit! Just cut the podcast. Nothing good happened. Run away.
I guess to what's the word? I want to contrast all of this negativity with some positivity and think about how lucky we are to exist in an era where you can say to yourself, man, I would love to watch a TV show about space, and you can go to Netflix and there's like 50 of them, and like 48 of them are ones that you haven't even seen before, but you can still rewatch Firefly for the 50th time, and like no one can judge you for it, and it's amazing. And it's just, we live in an era of really, really good pieces of media and entertainment, and like we don't really appreciate how lucky we are to be surrounded by, or to be like engulfed in this world of incredible high budget TV shows. Like, I don't know, I grew up watching an Australian soap called Home and Away, and let me tell you, it wasn't that good, but I knew every episode and all the characters, and like fell in love with at least 10 of the women in it. And now I have really good TV shows. Like, I've seen, you know, the likes of Breaking Bad and stuff like that. And those were unheard of when I was growing up. So I think...
Absolutely. There's been a bend towards, you know, premium television is where everything's going, because cable TV is failing, and like people don't want to pay for cable and satellite anymore. And these subscriptions to higher end services like HBO and Starz is even getting up there, coming out with American Gods in 2017. You know, it's the age of like premium television, you know, and premium entertainment, and a lot of things that I think would have been turned into movies before are becoming TV shows. Because can you imagine how crappy like a single Game of Thrones book condensed into 1 3-hour movie would have come out compared to what we've gotten?
Yeah, absolutely. That's like,
so
I think TV shows are actually replacing books, and they're doing a really good job of it. Like, they're doing something that movies can't quite do, and that is the character development and just the building of different storylines and stuff, and the fact that it can happen over like 72 whole hours instead of just 2.5 or whatever. And
that's also something that's mirrored in other entertainment, like video games. And actually, I'd even argue that like it's not necessarily books are being replaced, but we're finding new ways to tell stories in engaging ways, right? There's things that books can do that films and TV and video games can't do. In the same way, the reason that most video game movies fail, and we're probably going to get into this later, is that, you know, games do things that, like, the storytelling devices that are used in games are completely different from those used in films, and they don't necessarily mesh well with each other. And it's not necessarily that, but that people haven't found the correct way they haven't found the recipe for a good video game movie. And like, we've had things that are kind of okay, but and so like video games also, you know, like there's stuff happening with video games. We can talk about it in a negative light, like the death of the mid-tier game, like those 6.5, 7.5 games that used to come out constantly, that kind of like fillerware game that doesn't like THQ used to put out like crazy. You know what I'm talking about? It's like that middleware. There's a proper term for that, but and now everything is like AAA. Or indie. And the indie games are AAA.
Yeah, the indie games are like thriving in this sort of environment, and it's really interesting to see. And so are phone app games. Like those things, like, they boom, and they get such a huge like traction with people and their user base, and it's actually incredible to see, because like we have games like Metal Gear Solid 5, and then to contrast, probably more people played Angry Birds than played Metal Gear Solid 5, which is just incredibly interesting, because I don't know, it goes to show that even with this like really super high quality mega production games, there's also plenty of room for basic games that you can make yourself and stuff. Like, I feel like this is maybe like a very inspiring age to live in if you were a creative person, because there are so many avenues in which you can channel that kind of energy now, whereas before it was very, very limited, you know. Like,
well, look at us. Like, you want to talk about awesome stuff that happened in 2016 rather. Weird With You launched. It's a podcast. It's a great podcast. It's a wonderful podcast. It's probably the best podcast ever.
You won't believe how good the podcast is.
You won't believe how great it's an amazing podcast. Let me tell you, I know lots of podcasts, and this podcast is terrific. We're going to drain the podcasting swamp. But really, you know what I'm saying is that
absolutely.
Even with podcasting, like, this is something that is so accessible to us now that a couple of years ago, Justine and I wouldn't have been able to put together our show. Or like we wouldn't have known how, but like in this age where you can be like, I kind of, want to start a podcast, and then you look it up and you look into how to do it, and you get the equipment, and then you can just get started because everything's plug and play now. Like if you're creative and you have something to say, there's so many avenues for you to tell your story and to express yourself and to communicate and to connect with other people. There's people on the other end of the planet who listen to us every week and who listen to you every week and who've now listened to both of us, who are listening to us right now. Hello from the other side of the planet.
Yeah. What's happening in Taiwan, you guys?
Exactly. Yeah. What's happening in Australia? We have a person in Australia who listens to our podcast religiously.
Really? That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I think we should start off talking about video games because of how accessible that medium is, particularly for our listeners, but also just...
Well, you got your start in games, right? So
I did, yeah. The very first game I ever uploaded was Call of Duty Black Ops, the first one, where I played a free-for-all and I recorded it live and I won because I was good at that game. And I'm not so good anymore. I feel like I'm slowly falling out of touch with video games, and it kind of upsets me. So every year I do like a purge where I just go and buy all the games that are out and... largely end up never playing them, but I've got a mean game collection, so that's
the problem with those Steam summer sales. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my god, yeah, I have so many games. Like it's so funny.
This game and this game and this game, and never touch any of them.
Yeah, there's so many I downloaded the other day that I will never. I couldn't even tell you. I think I got Cities Skylines, which I have no intention of ever playing. I saw it and I thought that I would buy it, but I'm still going to play Age of Empires 2, which is 16 years old, so that just tells you the type of person that I am, and the age that I'm at, I think. But yeah, video games, I think 2016 was a very good year for video games because...
Not the greatest, but
no.
Definitely not weak at all. There were some really great games that came out this year.
Yeah, I think it was a lot better than the year before. When the next gen consoles launched 2014, wasn't it? That's crazy.
Yeah, I think they're like 3 years old now.
Oh my god! So that explains why the games are getting better, though, because they're pushing the boundaries of the capabilities of the consoles to come out with better games.
Well, and not to mention we had one newish like a 0.5 console launched this year, and we had another one announced that's going to come next year. So.
Which ones are those?
That's pretty amazing. So the what is it called now? The Neo? Is it still called the Neo?
Yeah, I think they changed
PS4K.
It was the I think it is the Neo.
PS4 2.5.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Do they still call it the Neo? I don't even know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
They know what we're talking about. That thing came out.
Wait, wasn't it called the Morpheus?
No, the Morpheus was the original code name for
the VR thing.
The VR headset, the PSVR.
So they like The Matrix, clearly, which is good because it's a good movie. But yeah, I'm really actually excited for the VR thing. I have a friend who has a huge fascination with all things VR, and he's got like all the headsets that are currently available and stuff like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he says that they're really good, but that the games... Like, he has some horror games on
more
them.
experiences now.
Yeah. It's I don't know, it's fascinating. I'm interested to see where they go with it, but I'm not prepared to financially, commit to one at the moment. But,
oh, yeah. That's not something that I could...
happy to buy, the latest franchise game that comes out or whatever. Like, every year I buy FIFA and then hate myself for it, 2 weeks later.
Yep.
And, yeah.
But what's our alternative? Pez? Come on.
I have that too this year. I bought it.
I heard it was really good. I've actually had trouble getting... I always think, man, that Pez looks really good. And one of the things I like about it is, I think I said last time, my family's from Uruguay, and FIFA doesn't have any of the Uruguayan teams in it. But because Pez has the license for Copa Libertadores in South America, they have the two big teams from Uruguay, Peñarol and Nacional. So I've always had this kind of maybe I'll grab it. But then I grabbed the demo, and I know people say it's more realistic, but honestly, it feels more arcadey to me than FIFA does.
Really? I think the exact opposite of that. Which is...
I know FIFA's a lot more automated, but there's just something in the in the pace of. See, the main criticism that I keep hearing about FIFA is the passing, right? Like the passing is too slow. It doesn't feel authentic, and there isn't enough.
Ferocious, I think, honestly.
There isn't enough variation in the pass, and I think it's actually gotten slightly worse for whatever reason recently.
Yeah.
But I find PES is too fast. I sit down and I watch a real football game, and the ball doesn't move like that, and the players don't move like that. And I find the automation in FIFA, has its issues, absolutely, but for whatever reason, it does to me look slightly more natural if it's not just a little bit too slow. The ball doesn't move quick enough necessarily.
What difficulty do you play on when you play against the AI on FIFA?
So I play on semi-pro so that I don't rage quit and destroy my controller.
Okay.
I can play and win on pro, but I don't know. I get frustrated if I'm not winning. So
so I play on legendary, and I can...
well, good for you.
That's the only reason I asked, was for me to shut
nice
you down.
No, you know what the thing is that I'm not a skiller.
Yeah.
I play a passing game.
Oh no, so do I, totally. I have no flair about me whatsoever in the game. But one thing I will say is that when you go up to legendary difficulty, you see how fast and really unrealistically the AI will play, particularly the worst teams. And I made my YouTube channel around... the most successful time I had as a YouTuber was when I was making career mode videos, and that's the only way I know how to build up subscribers and stuff. And the reason that I stopped is because I just found the game mode to be completely unbearable. You get past 2 seasons, and it's really nice and rewarding to see your team build up, and it's really nice to see the youngsters that you have develop their skills and all of that stuff. But you're still playing against, the Bournemouth team that you just cannot beat because they are literally Barcelona, and that is just... There's no different styles or techniques or ethos or... everything in FIFA is just the same. All the teams, they end up with the same managers the whole time. It doesn't feel authentic or realistic at all. And I think that was the one thing that FIFA had in its favor, was that they have the licenses and they're fully authentic Premier League, and it looks like the Premier League, but it doesn't feel like the Premier League. Whereas if you play Pro Evo and you just play beat Brazil against whatever country, and it feels really good, I don't know, Bayern Munich against Juventus I think was on the demo, and it felt amazing to me, intercepting passes when they're going through midfield with slide tackles, stuff that on FIFA you should be able to do, but you just can't because the AI is developed in such a way that it's too perfect to play against.
I know what you mean. I get the feeling I'm just used to FIFA. That's my thing. It's it's a comfortable chair that I like to sit in.
Yeah.
But I feel like the better game is some weird combination of the two.
Oh, for
some
sure.
Sort of if they could Frankenstein those two games together, then it would be amazing.
If you held a gun to my head and you were like FIFA or PES, I pick FIFA every time. I will say that. I feel at the moment as though Pro Evolution has a better game engine, and the FIFA game engine I think it's really good, but what we sort of are sick of is the fact that it's kind of in the same iteration as it was 4 years ago, and they just make minuscule changes to it, and I think it's really due a big overhaul. And I thought when I saw Frostbite, that's what they're called, isn't it? Frostbite?
Frostbite, yeah. I think it's Frostbite 2.
I had Frost World in my head for some reason, but... it's
a magical place.
Yeah. Really cold this time of year, though. When I saw them coming on board, I was like, oh, excellent. Finally, this is going to really upgrade. No, it's the same.
It's the same stuff. And it almost looks the same also.
It does,
the light, the volumetric lighting was the big change this year.
That's what it is, though. It's always superficial changes that get new people on board.
The physicality feels a little bit better, but it's still not quite there. It is a nicer feel to muscle your way off of other players now, and big players do feel like an insurmountable kind of obstacle when you're playing with a little diminutive striker or something. But I don't know, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
And okay, and I know this, we're going off on a weird tangent because this episode's supposed to be about 2016, but I will say this about FIFA is that I've been saying for years that what they really need to do for, because their model is right now, like the reason that the game has been so iterative and stagnant is because they're making so much money off of Ultimate Team.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there's a change that they could make, and maybe they're working on it because so many people have had a similar idea, that would actually benefit Ultimate Team also, and that's to create a new. I know they can't use My Club because I think My Club is a PES thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But some sort of like a similar name they'd have to come up with, and the idea is that you would start a team from scratch and have to kind of not just work your way up, but also create your own custom shield for the team, create a crest rather, and like the main thing, the thing that would actually help Ultimate Team, I think, is the ability to create your own stadiums and have the stadiums be modular so that you can change seats, you can change sections, you can change roof, you can change how many seats up it goes, just some sort of like stadium building thing. And then what you do is you translate those modular pieces into cards. And you turn them into Ultimate Team cards, and then like people would go nuts for these cards to try and build like the most awesome badass stadium for their Ultimate team, right? It's just an extension. And even think about like different grass surfaces.
Yeah.
Like different surface patterns would be something that you'd have to get through the cards. And so like I know I'm kind of just like preaching to the demons of EA here to be take more money. But if that's what it takes to get kind of like modular stadium design in our manager career mode, then like I'll go for it.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, and I think an online career mode would just be phenomenal if that could be done. But sadly, I don't think they ever will.
But other than FIFA, there's been a lot of good stuff this year, and even stuff that I haven't personally played, but I can at least recognize the quality of.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the Game Awards and what kind of games won this year, Overwatch and like Blizzard with Overwatch ran away with a lot of stuff because it's, first person shooter competitive play. I used to be into it a lot more when I was in high school, I guess, with like the original Halo and everything, but I'm not as much into it anymore. But there's something about Overwatch. It's that Blizzard charm, that cartoony.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
They have really excellent design over at Blizzard, and that goes from visuals to a gameplay level, and they're really able to make stuff that's addictive. They've proven it time and time again, and you think like, what? This is the time that Blizzard's going to fail. This is the time that Blizzard is going to screw up, and they never do. They just have like an excellent design ethos, and they have like really inspired decisions that go into their games where it shouldn't work, but for whatever reason it works, and people eat it up and they can't stop. And it's not just because it's Blizzard, there's something in there. They have something. They've got the magic sauce, L.
Yeah.
They've got the magic sauce.
I love when a studio like that is in their prime, or when anyone creating like sort of, I hate terms like this, but like artistic output. Like, I love it when they've found the winning formula and that you can look forward to them delivering every single time. Like,
look at Crystal Dynamic with Tomb Raider. Look at which I mean didn't come out this year, but the PS4 version came out this year, so we can talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. And it sold a lot this year too. It's made it into like the top 50 selling games of the year and stuff like that. So
yeah, which actually makes it kind of sad that they didn't launch simultaneously. Like Crystal Dynamics got to figure out their shit with Microsoft, because that timed exclusive BS I think cost them a lot of sales.
I hate all of that stuff. Like it's been such a pain.
If you're going to be exclusive, be exclusive. But if you're not going to be exclusive, this timed exclusive thing, I think, is only hurting developers.
Yeah, I can't stand it. It's just, I don't know. I don't like that kind of thing at all. Like, I feel like in the past, Call of Duty games have really suffered on PlayStation because of their exclusivity with Microsoft and Xbox, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's pretty obvious that developers put more effort into developing it for the Xbox, especially with Call of Duty. Anyway, that's one thing I do know. But it just
It's built for the Xbox and then ported to PS4.
Yeah, and so you're left with this
Which, I mean,
like piece of junk.
That was always the argument with PS3 versus PS4. Like, I used to work at an EB Games back in the day, and when people were between those two consoles, it was kind of like, well, are you playing exclusives? And if you're playing exclusives, then which ones are the one that call to you? Get that console. But if you're playing cross-platform games in the Xbox 360 PS3 era, they actually usually looked better on the Xbox 360 because they were built on the 360, because the stupid processor in the PS4 was a bitch to make stuff for.
Yeah.
And so people just ported their stuff over. So it was built on PC for 360 because they had the same architecture, and then it was ported, and the ports were always slightly weaker. So the contrast was off, and the graphics were comparable. And, but then you had stuff like Heavy Rain, which blew anything on the 360 out of the water in terms of graphics,
and
right?
The Last of Us too, like games like that.
Well, and there you go, The Last of Us. But Naughty Dog, speaking of 2016, Naughty Dog, shout out to Naughty Dog. Holy crap. How do they do it? They talking about studios in their prime with the magic sauce, right? Like, they had just knocked it out of the park with Last of Us. Now, granted, I think Last of Us is a stronger game than Uncharted 4, but Uncharted 4 is just, holy shit. Like, how can you not look at that game and think... There were so many moments where I genuinely paused in that game to just kind of take it in for like 10 minutes.
One of my friends took a picture on his phone of his TV while he was playing Uncharted 4, and I
did the same thing.
But this guy put out a Snapchat and said, "This is a good view to wake up to," and everyone he knows is like, "Oh man, where are you?" Like... You know what I mean?
It's unbelievable.
That's how good it looks. Like, people think that you are actually there when you take a picture of it on your TV.
And it's not just the graphics, it's the storytelling. It's the level of like facial animation that they've been able to achieve, and the emotion that they're able to convey, the performances that they're able to get out of their actors, because you can have excellent actors, voice actors, whatever kind of actor you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But if the writing and the direction isn't there, then you're not going to get a good performance. It doesn't matter how good they are, right? Like, how many actors win an Oscar and the next year are in garbage, and it's bad, and their performance is bad because the directing isn't good and because the writing isn't there. And Naughty Dog consistently nails that stuff. Yeah, Uncharted 4 is just like unparalleled awesomeness. People I know who aren't into video games have seen gameplay footage from Uncharted 4 and been totally enthralled in it and be like, that looks awesome.
Yeah.
And it's their old selling point for the original Uncharted is like, oh, it looks like a movie. It's like you're playing a movie. But like, you feel so engaged in what they're doing, and they constantly surprise you. Years and years and years after the original, they're consistently and constantly surprising us with little details and clever puzzles and just brilliant, beautiful design. Like, I could go on, but Naughty Dog is knocking it out of the park. Last of Us 2 announced at, was it PlayStation Experience?
Yeah, it was announced the day after me and one of my friends said how much we missed The Last of Us on a podcast, and then the day after that podcast went up, they were like, all right, this El De Niro guy, he's onto something. Let's do another one.
Let's just quickly throw together a trailer in a few hours.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable. I love them. And CD Projekt Red. How make the Witcher.
Oh right, okay. I never played.
How the hell do you win RPG of the Year with an expansion? That's how good they are, ladies and gentlemen. They won RPG of the Year with an expansion. Now, granted, it's not a downloadable content. The term downloadable content has kind of usurped expansion, but this is like a true to life expansion. It is hours and hours of gameplay. It's basically like a new game in the Witcher 3 universe.
Yeah.
And it's holy crap. That I can't wait for Cyberpunk to come out, because that team is just I don't even know how they do what they do in the time that they do it. the level of detail in that game, how densely populated the map was in terms of content. Like, it was actually off-putting at first how much to do in that game there was. But once you got into it, oh man, what a rich world. Holy crap.
Yeah, so there's a game that I'm playing right now that I think I'd put in my top 5 games of 2016, and that's Final Fantasy 15. That
Really? Liking it?
I really, really like it. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I was a huge fan of 7 and 8. I think Final Fantasy 8 is like one of my favorite games of all time. I like it more than 7. I know I'm in the minority when I say that, but I think
it's is it 4 that a lot of people are into as well? Or is it 4 or 5?
Yeah, 4 is definitely, of the first few, like 4 is the most loved one as far as I know.
Was the one with the Magitech armor, right? Like,
I
don't remember.
Don't know. I was never like hugely into them until I think I rented Final Fantasy 7 when I was like 8 or younger even. Because that's what we used to do when I was younger. For anyone listening, because you're all like 16, we used to have to go and rent videos or rent video games and videos too on weekends, and that was what we did for fun. But yeah, I rented 7. I really liked it, and then I asked for 8 for my birthday, and my granddad got it for me, and it's one of my favorite games. And like, I love 7, and I think 7 is like objectively a better game, but I think 8 just had the cinematics right. It had the like the sort of, even just the intro to that. You can just go on YouTube and type in Final Fantasy 8 intro and just watch it. Yeah. It's amazing. It's such a good opening scene, and it really sells the world to you without actually telling you anything about it, and it's strangely awesome. And I love just the actual fantasy element of it, and the fact that they create these crazy worlds that are this mix of like modern primitive stuff, but also hugely advanced like utopian sci-fi stuff, and I think that is a great mix. But yeah, so Final Fantasy X was the last one that I played because I'd never heard anything good about any of the ones since then.
Did you like 10?
Yeah, I really liked 10. I thought 10 was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, 10 gets mixed reviews from people. I kind of enjoyed 10. That was the last Final Fantasy game that I was deeply involved with. I bought 13 because somebody had recommended it to me, and let me tell you,
that person is now
what
dead.
A piece of crap.
Yeah.
Horrible game, terrible design choices, like a 30-hour tutorial before you get into the actual game world. Ridiculous.
Yeah,
it
that's
is like
tough. Like
but I bought it from a place that didn't have a return policy on open games, and I complained so hard that the manager actually gave me my money back because it was recommended to me by an employee, and I kind of reamed them out for it.
Wow, excellent.
Because it turns out that they hadn't played it, and they just were blindly recommending games to people.
Oh, that son of a bitch.
Yeah. But I mean, I've been hearing good stuff about this new one. I haven't played it. I've seen a lot of gameplay footage from it. I have, just even from watching gameplay footage of it, I can tell you 2 things. I like the dynamic between the main characters, but awesome. I hate the voice acting.
Oh, really? I don't mind it. I didn't like it at first. Like, it struck me as very odd and out of place. But it's definitely gotten to a stage where it's kind of charming, I guess, now. Like, I quite enjoy it now. I think when you play it long enough and you see how the characters act in accordance with their voice, it kind of makes sense that they would talk like that, which is...
I do feel it's almost like a parody of itself, though. Like, I'd be interested to see, just comparatively, how I haven't looked it up. I know it's out there. I just have been lazy about it. But the Japanese... or like the original audio, and just comparing the performances, because I feel like the English voice acting, it happens a lot in anime, and I don't watch anime nearly as much as I did before, which is to say that I don't really watch it at all now, except for like really select stuff. But it just, like, English dubs tend to have this really overacting quality to them that makes them seem like anime is kind of dumb.
I think that's intentional, though. Like,
But it doesn't exist necessarily in the original voiceover, right? Like in the Japanese, it's not always there.
No, but the context of each thing in its respective culture is different too. Like,
That's true.
In Japan, it's like serious, whereas over here, it's like, look how crazy Japan is. Let's have some of that, as long
But
as
I
it's...
want the serious.
Yeah, no, me too. And I think, like, out of the games that do that, I think Metal Gear Solid does the best job of keeping it serious and not making it ridiculous at all. Like,
Yeah.
it's very...
Well, that's just Kojima, right? Like,
He's a god, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's the man. But I think it's supposed to be like that. Like, Final Fantasy has always been like that. Like, the reactions that characters have to things has always been very odd. Like,
it's very over the top.
Yeah, like, I remember in Final Fantasy VIII, like, Squall was supposed to be this, like, angsty, brooding type guy who learns how to feel emotions and come into his own and all that stuff. And, like, there are some tantrums that he throws in that game that are just so outrageous and over the top. Like, it doesn't...
Right.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like just the context has to change based on who it's being sold to, and I think it's intentional, and I think it's done like that to facilitate that sort of culture change. So, it doesn't really bother me. I've definitely... like, it did seem odd at first, but it's definitely like part of the experience for me
It's
now.
kind of grown on you.
Yeah,
I recognize that it's nitpicky on my part. But I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think it's that the parts of Final Fantasy that resonate with me are the more serious parts.
Yeah.
And the other parts necessarily don't. And that's the reason I haven't picked up. That's the reason that Final Fantasy 13 like really didn't, other than all of the other problems with it.
Yeah.
The mark. But we were just talking briefly about Kojima, and like, how can you talk about Kojima without mentioning that Death Stranding was announced this year?
Yeah, I'm so excited. Like, I don't even know anything about it other than that it's like a horror type game and it's got Norman Reedus in it and that Kojima is behind it. And that's all I really need to know.
Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
Mads,
right.
And Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah. And that's, Kojima is like a massive, like, he's a self-described wimp. Like,
he's a cinephile. Oh, he's a cinephile also.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I think
I have him on Twitter, and he constantly is posting about all the movies that he's watching. I'm like, when do you work, man?
He says his body is 70% movies or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
That's what it says in his Twitter bio. But he has said in the past that he doesn't like horror games because he's too afraid. Like, he's a massive, massive wimp, is what he says. So,
it's almost insulting what they're doing with Metal Gear, then.
Yeah, I know. But I think that's the main reason he got Del Toro in his, so that he doesn't have to do all the scary stuff himself. Like, he's going to leave it to one of the masters in that area. But I'm really excited for that game without knowing anything about it, and that's...
Now, do you feel they announced it too soon, though?
I worry because they announced...
That game's... I'm sorry, guys. That game is not coming out until, like, earliest late 2019. Like, I'm thinking third quarter 2019. Conservatively, probably 2020, 2021. Like, Kojima historically takes a ridiculous amount of time to make video games.
Yeah,
and
true.
He only just picked an engine to run the game on.
I can hear the hearts breaking.
It sucks. I want it now. But, when we get it, it's going to be fantastic. It's just, I have this issue with games being announced too early. Like, I wish almost that everything would do what Bethesda did with Fallout, where it's like, yeah, here's this game that everybody's been expecting. Oh, and by the way, it's out in 2 months or 4 months or whatever it was. Like, it was ridiculous. It's the shortest announcement to release I've ever seen.
It's a symptom of what's happening elsewhere in pop culture, and
absolutely,
it really irks me too. But I think it's the way that studios get a hold of you well in advance, and so that they can rack up the pre-orders and pre-sales and things like that. Because
we've seen what the hype train does, though. Because you know what else came out this year was Mighty No. 9.
Oh, I thought you were going to start talking about No Man's Sky, and I'm so upset with the backlash that game received. Like, I feel like I created the game. So.
Yeah, I actually, I have a soft spot in my heart for No Man's Sky.
Yeah, I don't get what people were expecting. Like, I don't know. They always talk about lying and like, oh, he's a liar and all this stuff. Like, all right, you can't land on asteroids. Jesus Christ, would you even want to do that anyway?
Well,
Like,
people were upset about the multiplayer aspect of
yeah,
it as well. It isn't there, and glitches, and the planets that they showed weren't necessarily representative of what was actually in the game.
that's true. But I was under the impression that you would never be able to meet people online anyway. Like, I think he did a very good job of explaining that. I know he kind of went to and fro a lot, but in the interviews where he supposedly lied, like he
Well, but that's
often
my
like covered it
that's
with, well, you might be able to, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I like Sean Murray. I think is very undeserving of the amount of negative of the amount of vitriol. Like let's not mince words here. Like people hate his guts for this game for some reason,
that's the gaming
and
community. There's something so toxic about it. Like, I don't know.
a
It's
lot of
very
parts of it,
strange.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it's really not his fault. Like Sony shit the bed with this game.
Yeah.
Sony are the ones who bigged up this game as like this massive experience. They're the ones who pushed it out and took an indie game and flaunted it in front of the world as if it was like a giant AAA masterpiece, when it was really, from the beginning, from its inception, kind of like a tech demo of like what this technology can do, right? It's like the
Yeah.
first foray into this kind of massive, what's it called? Procedurally generated universe idea. It's like, look at what this can do, and isn't this amazing? And what the sense of discovery and everything. Now, there's definitely issues with the game, and there's gameplay issues with the game beyond the idea of like lying.
Yeah.
There's a lack of motivation after a certain point to continue, and like the things that are supposed to grab you in the game don't necessarily like hook you the way that they should. They like almost do, but the hook breaks free at the last moment.
Yeah, completely agree.
But it's not a horrible game like a lot of people say it is. I think a lot of people just jump on the hate bandwagon, and like I feel really bad for Sean Murray because he's trying really hard and he's received so many death threats. Like, death threats. It's a video game, guys. It's supposed to be fun. And that's the other thing. No Man's Sky should not have been a full priced game.
Yeah.
If it had come out with like the same price point as Ratchet and Clank, for example, I think that would have been fine. If people were spending $40 American or $30 American for a game of No Man's Sky's quality, and it being touted as more of an indie game than a giant, sprawling AAA, crazy sci-fi land to play around in, then I don't know that it would have received the same backlash. And the other thing was that Sony didn't have enough control over the marketing machine. Like they put him out there and they didn't tell him what to say.
Yeah,
and that's been
like, he's just a nice guy who had no media training whatsoever, and you can like even feel how uncomfortable he is in those interviews and stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just like, if you think about that and you like just have it in your heart to personify Sean Murray a little bit and stop thinking of him as some kind of scumlord demon.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate that I feel like in certain interviews he was like almost coerced into saying things like about the game.
Well, and that's what the media's job is, right? Like
Yeah.
they poke and prod, and you can't get mad at them either because that's literally their job. We go to them for that information, right? And what they can poke and prod out. But when you grab a developer who doesn't have that sort of media training or savvy, and they're getting little things out of him that maybe he's like genuinely was excited about and wanted to put in the game but weren't quite ready yet, and then didn't work.
Yeah, so that's what I think the main issue was just like the amount of times he said things like, in the current version you can, or we plan on doing this, but people just took that as gospel, and like, he shouldn't have said that, but I still don't think that that's his fault. I think that's just that sort of childlike ignorance and stuff.
Right.
But like, you wouldn't catch David Vonderhaar saying a thing like that, so it just goes to show you like why people like that are in those kinds of roles for the big companies, like, community managers and things like that. That's why they exist, is so that things like this don't happen with games. But No Man's Sky was made by 12 people, I think. So
Something like that. Yeah, it's an extremely small team.
Yeah,
it's an amazing, like, it's such a huge achievement, and it's not being recognized as one because people are just like,
yeah, it's horrible.
Just constantly shitting on it and hating it. Like, the hate wagon rolled on pretty hard for this one. Yeah. And I don't know if you listen to Danny O'Dwyer anymore. Danny O'Dwyer used to work at GameSpot. He has his own. He streams now and he podcasts. He's kind of splintered off and done his own thing. I think he's on Patreon.
Right, okay. I know who he is, but I've never checked out his podcast.
Really excellent interviewer. He's actually kind of friends with Sean Murray, and he's kind of alluded to the idea that when stuff calms down and he's not looking to be assassinated anymore, that he wants to have a sit down and have like a proper interview about what happened with No Man's Sky with Sean Murray, and just have it as like candid and respectful as possible from an interview perspective. And he kind of has the ability to do that now because he's not affiliated with a giant company anymore.
Yeah.
So Danny O'Dwyer was GameSpot. Did he go to Game Informer after? I don't remember.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
Well, he's solo now, so go check out Danny O'Dwyer. He's awesome.
Shout out to him.
But yeah, there's been so many good things this year also, though. Like, Doom came out. Again, not huge on the first-person shooters, but I got my hands on Doom, and that game is just metal.
It's a classic. I didn't play the latest one, but I read from a lot of people who I really respect the opinion of that it is like phenomenal, like one of the best games that they've played in years and stuff. And from what I understand, it is like, if you were around in that era and you still consider yourself to be a gamer, this is going to be your favorite game ever, basically.
Yep.
So
it looks fantastic. Dishonored 2, also fantastic game design. Just like some of the stuff that you can do in the Dishonored games is just like it hasn't been done in that way in other games. And that level of creativity now, when people are going on about like, oh, no original ideas, and it's like, okay, maybe it's not an original idea, but the way that they're going about doing it and the way that they're letting you mess around with the game world is freaking awesome. Like, there's a level of play in those games where and discovery where you're open to kind of interpret abilities and powers, and the developers are open about the fact that, you know, they've seen people do things in the game and combine certain abilities that they hadn't even thought of.
Really?
Right?
Yeah, that's so cool when that happens.
That kind of like emergent gameplay is unbelievable. Like, I love it when that stuff can happen in games. And Bethesda's consistently knocking it out of the park. I have really high hopes for Prey, the Prey reboot that they're doing. That looks ridiculous. You can become a coffee mug.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
So there's like an ability, and so I think that one of the aliens in the game has the ability to transform into any object. It's like a shape changer.
Nice.
So it, like, anything in the game could potentially be trying to kill you. But in part of the game, I'm not sure how the game mechanics work for it, but you can take that power. And so, like, to get through, there's kind of like a glass barrier and like a little, I guess like you'd have at like a, I don't know, like at the tube or something to pass money under, right? Or to pass credentials under. Security, and there's like a coffee mug in there, and he becomes the coffee mug and kind of like rolls through it and then becomes the person again. And it's just like, what the hell? Like, these are things that people go on that like next gen doesn't look as next gen as the jump between like PS2 to PS3 or Xbox to Xbox 360, but it's not necessarily everything. It's not all about the graphics, guys. Like, there's things that can be done now that would not have been possible in those games, whether it's like having a ridiculous amount of NPCs on the screen at the same time, or just like the lighting rendering that, you know, makes everything look better even though the graphics aren't necessarily that much better. Like, there's so many things that people can do now. It's amazing.
That's what we should probably wrap up talking about games, but
we could probably talk about games more.
Yeah, I know. But what I wanted to say was, you said earlier that it's been really hard for people to make a good movie out of a video game, because video games do things that can kind of only exist in video games. And that's
Absolutely.
that's just the magic of video games to me.
It's you doing it. You're doing it.
And you're also teleported into this other dimension where you
Mm-hmm.
remember the ads for PlayStation 2, and it was like PlayStation 2, the third place. And it's like it literally is just another place that you got. Like, the Final Fantasy and Metal Gear Solid are two games that genuinely have, Metal Gear Solid 2 in particular, like, I feel like has had a genuine impact on my life to the degree that, like, a parent would, or like somebody very important.
I was
to you.
raised by Snake.
I was definitely raised in some way by the words of Solid Snake in the outro of that game. And it's just, I don't know, it just, games.
Pity that most of that game you play is Raiden.
I really like him. He's the man.
I like Raiden. He's alright.
I hate
He's
the
a little
way,
bit whiny, but...
Yeah, but he's supposed to be you, and I think it's just the most meta thing anyone has ever done in a game. Like,
I also like what they did with him after.
I like that too, but I also sort of wish that they didn't do it, because in a way they gave the anti-Raiden people what they wanted, and I don't want them to get what they wanted. I want them to shut up and play the game. They're being the whiny ones. That's the, like, absolute irony of it all as well. But yeah, the Metal Gear games and the Final Fantasy games, and like various other games too, just really, like, left an imprint on me that can't really be done to the same degree by movies, even though movies are absolutely a much better art form. Like, I don't really think that games, I do consider them to be art, but I don't consider them to be culturally significant in the same way, because I don't think that they sort of penetrate the bubble like the same way that movies can, or books can.
But I think we're going in that direction, and certainly with
I think so too.
the ideas of narrative, like more mainstream with stuff like Uncharted, but then with indie developers, like games like Inside has a kind of power to it that you don't necessarily find in a lot of other games.
Yeah, and Life is Strange.
That Dragon
too.
Cancer.
Games like that have... in fact, did you ever play Firewatch?
I didn't play it. I've been wanting to grab it, but I didn't get to play it. No.
I did a Let's Play of it on my channel. You can check it out there. Be sure to like, rate, subscribe, and comment.
I will.
It's that game as well was phenomenal, I thought, and it was so basic and so simple, and in a way.
But it's the narrative that's the thing that's happening right now, and I know a lot of people call them walking simulators as a kind of derogatory name for them,
but so much more than that. Like, you could be doing
Gone
anything.
Home. Are you kidding me?
I have
Gone Home. I played the shit out of that. I played it so many times over and over again. I got all of the achievements in it. It was that story. The way that it's told, that's something that can only be done in video games. You couldn't tell that story in any other medium, going back to what we were talking about before. And same with Firewatch. Like, Firewatch doesn't work in any other medium. It doesn't work. It might work as a book, but
no, I don't
it wouldn't
think
be the same.
It's got to have the, like...
Between the characters,
it's so
right?
Good. Like, it's so enticing in some way. I don't know.
You need the performance for that. That's like the part of it that bleeds over from film and TV, right? Is that then, like, your own agency in the game to kind of ignore something that's happening. Like, there are parts of that game that don't happen unless you engage with
completely.
them.
That's what you want.
Exploration, freedom, like stuff like that is unique to video games.
Game Ranks, the YouTube channel? It's game.
I've heard it. I've probably seen something.
They have like 3 million subscribers, so I'm sure that they've popped up like in your recommended or whatever. But I check them out a lot, and one of the guys on there was saying about how he genuinely believed that Warcraft and Assassin's Creed would lead to a new era of movies. And I was like, you poor fool. Like, you don't understand how far gaming has
gone. A new era where people stop trying to make
that would be the ideal outcome, I think. But it's so, like, that's what the thing, like, the whole Gamergate thing where people were like, it's about ethics in games journalism. It's like, when I hear, like, that's games journalism, and that's what they, like, you think that the games journalism has always been a sewer. It's not where you can, like, I don't know, it's not... It's just such a weird sort of thing, the way they're like, we genuinely believe that video games are going to be the next thing that movie directors do. And it's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Like, I can't believe that a studio put so much money into Warcraft and I don't know, it bombed so hard. Like, they made their money back, but there's no way they made all the money back on all the promo that they did and everything.
And it's people who have no idea what the source material is putting their kind of their fingers in the pie. You know what I mean? Like, there was people who were involved with Warcraft who were fans, who cared about that, and then the studio comes in and it changes things because it doesn't understand. It's like, we're going to take this thing that's a sensation and you're going to make it because you know what you're doing. Okay, so the person goes to make it and they're like, no, you can't do that because that doesn't happen in movies. And it's like, well, that's the thing that all these people who love this thing are here for. And if you take that away, they will not enjoy this. And the studio's like, no, we know what we're doing. We're a bunch of old, rich white men, like, who've never touched a video game in their entire lives and barely seen any movies. Like, and then with Assassin's Creed, like, I like Michael Fassbender. He's an excellent actor. Some questionable things about his personal life that I don't necessarily want to get into, but as an actor, like, very, very, very good. The director just came off doing what was it, Macbeth, with him and the female lead. I'm forgetting her name at the moment, and all three of the Jeremy Irons in Assassin's Creed. And on top of that, Assassin's Creed had the perfect scenario. Right? They were making a game in the Assassin's Creed universe that wasn't based on the story of the games. They were making a film in the Assassin's Creed universe that wasn't based on the story of the games.
There's a lot you can do with
like
that.
They had so much they could do with that. Michael Fassbender has never played an Assassin's Creed game. After he got the rights to do the game, he played like 5 minutes of Assassin's Creed 1 to get an idea of like the fluidity of movement, whatever BS he fed the interviewers in the media roundup. Like, come on. Where and Ubisoft was okay with this, when, especially after what happened with Prince of Persia.
Forgot about
I haven't
that
seen
movie.
Assassin's Creed yet. I haven't seen Assassin's Creed yet, but two things, like, and people aren't going to complain about it as much because he's Caucasian, but Michael Fassbender is not Spanish. Okay? It's still a problem, especially because Spain has a lot of mixing in terms of genetics with like Moorish people and Middle Eastern people and influence. Like, the man is not Spanish. Okay? And I'm not saying it's whitewashing or anything, but he hasn't played the game. He doesn't know what the source material is. I don't think he was necessarily the right actor for, like, if it had been in Scotland, if it had been Assassin's Creed Scotland and it wasn't about running in buildings, but it was in the same universe, and it's like, okay, so in the games it's about free running and all of this stuff, but in the cinematic universe it's going to be exploring all the things that we can't do in video games, but they work better in film. Yeah, no, they didn't do that because that would make sense.
So, like, I see completely what you're saying about, like, the fact that he, like, it's not only that he hasn't even attempted to understand the source material, but as he is a Irish German guy, like, he has no connection with the story either. So there's really nothing that ties him to there's nothing that makes sense about him being in Assassin's Creed other than that he's a big name. And he
could have been anywhere in the United Kingdom. He could have been in Ireland. He could have been in Scotland. He could have been in Germany. He could have been anywhere in like northeastern Europe. Or sorry, northwestern Europe. Got my directions mixed up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he could have been anywhere there and it would have been fine. He could have been in Wales. They could have been all over the place there and it would have been fine. You know? Especially since now I'm kind of starting to get interested in like what's happening with assassins who aren't necessarily in big cities, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a part of the story that hasn't been explored. But like, why aren't they doing that in the film? Like, I don't know. Let's do it in Spain.
Yeah.
The Spanish Inquisition.
It wouldn't be the only thing. It wouldn't be the only time that the studios blew a huge budget blockbuster this year, but also, and this is a great segue, it wouldn't be the only time that Jeremy Irons put his name on it either, because Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice,
hot garbage.
Was
Dawn
a
of hot
pile
garbage.
of garbage.
On fire.
Oh my god. What a movie. So, I will say, though, that it isn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it would be.
It's not unwatchable.
Yeah, completely. But
nearly.
If anyone, like, if you're confused as to why people think it's bad or whatever, it's because like a lot of people, like, if you're a fan of Batman and Superman, I can see why you would like it. But I think just it's like the greatest example of bad screenwriting that I've probably ever seen, like in a huge movie that everyone's seen, if you know what I mean. Like there are obviously better examples out there, but this movie,
the sound design,
oh my god,
is atrocious.
Yeah,
there are scenes. There's the one that sticks out to me like a sore thumb is, of course, like the Wonder Woman theme crashing in with no context. Like if we had the Wonder Woman movie first, and then, she showed up in the Batman versus Superman, and that theme came on, it would have probably played a lot better because she would have earned it by then, right? But there's no it's like they were trying to make it a thing, but it wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean?
It was
what? Like out of nowhere. And the other one that I remember is Batman standing on the top of the crane. When he's like waiting for the Batmobile in like the shipping yard. I forget what was happening there. I only watched it the once. and it's like the music is like normal and everything, and then he's like standing on the top of the crane, and like each character has their own theme, and whenever on the screen that theme plays really loud and annoyingly, and so he's just standing on the top of the crane, and there's the epic Batman music going. I forget what it sounded like, but it was like a dun 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 dun, and he's just standing on a crane not doing anything, and this epic music is playing in the background. I'm like, who edited this? Nothing is happening. This is comically bad. Like there's, especially after Christopher Nolan's movies.
I know.
The coup de grace.
Like, even when he's standing on top of that crane, that's when the truck rolls in and it has the tracker that he put on it. And, like, the tracker is on the back of the truck and it's going, doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. Don't make your tracker have noise on it.
Oh, and it's like mirroring the music.
What is that supposed? That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like, that's terrible. Like, I'm sure the audience would have understood that it's a tracking device. Like, I really don't think it was necessary to have the beeping there. That was just terrible in itself. But, I mean, I think that's me being nitpicky. Like, maybe they did just do it to explain to the audience or whatever. There's so many other things in the movie that were terrible.
They do play to the lowest common denominator. But there's things in the movie that don't make sense.
Yes, the dream scene.
The beginning? The opening?
The opening, right, yeah. So
with flying Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I did not like that. And I was totally into it up to that point, too.
Yeah.
But the Flash, when the Flash arrives in a dream thing and tells him that Lois is
I didn't know that was the Flash.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think that No, I did because I knew it was the guy, Ezra, whatever his name is. But so he's...
I had no context for it.
He has arrived in Bruce Wayne's dream and tells him that Lois is the key, right? That's the thing that happens. So Bruce Wayne wakes up and is like, oh, Lois is the key. He does nothing with that information. What is she the key to? It's not referenced ever again. He doesn't do anything with her. Nothing happens with her. She actually, like, was shafted in that movie. She had nothing to do for the whole thing. And, like, oh, man, it's... Like, all she did was throw the what do you call
spear.
it? Yeah, the kryptonite spear into a lake, and then not a lake, but into like a puddle, and then pick it back up again, and
the world's deepest puddle.
Yeah, the world's deepest puddle. And like, she is the key to what? Oh, it was so.
Wait, is that set up for the next movie? Is that set up for Avengers, for Justice League?
Couldn't tell.
Is that gonna become the thing in the next movie? And they're gonna be like, that tidbit that Barry is the Flash in this one. Or is that because there's multiple Flashes, right?
Like, I couldn't tell you.
Whatever. Is that the key that the Flash left? Is that the clue? Was it for the next film? That's a bad decision.
Yeah.
This movie should not have been first. Why was it first?
And also, just the fact that they are both characters are Batman in it. Like, Superman... like, at no point does Superman even say what's on his mind.
Martha!
Yeah, oh my god, that was disgraceful. That was... Who... No, I...
What did you say? I said Martha. Martha's my mom's name, too. Let's be friends.
terrible. Absolutely
Jesus.
terrible. Like, Batman is so intent on ruining this guy and killing him, but then he finds out his mum is the same first name as him. And the setup to it was awful too, because who calls out their mum's first... it was a bad movie. There were too many things wrong with it. And if you saw that movie and thought, well, 2016 is terrible, what about Captain America Civil War? Did you see that?
I did.
What did you think of that?
Oh, people are gonna not like me for this.
Oh no!
I'm not huge on it.
Really?
I'm all right with it. It's a good movie. It's a fun popcorn summer blockbuster. I enjoyed it while I watched it. Spider-Man was awesome. I was left very excited for the Spider-Man film. All of the actors are fantastic. Their chemistry is excellent. I didn't have any complaints as far as the story goes, about like the kind of the revenge story and the like. I thought like Black Panther was also like a fantastic part of that film, and that whole storyline was excellent. I don't understand why this was a Captain America film specifically, because it wasn't really that much about Captain America. And I think one of my issues with the film was that it wasn't about any of them. It wasn't an Avengers movie per se, but it also didn't feel like a Captain America movie. We had two Captain America movies before this, and they set a tone and they set expectations for, like what is because they're all slightly different. Like Thor is a lot more fantasy. The Iron Man films have their own thing going with the like rich millionaire, like an almost kind of Batman, if Batman was like hilariously out of control, comic relief kind of self-deprecating character, who's also at the same time simultaneously full of themselves.
Yeah, if you the sarcastic, intelligent jerk type character that's come to like every movie in the last 5 years.
Exactly. And then, like they all have their kind of feel to them. And this didn't feel like a Captain America movie to me. I don't think that there was enough done with Bucky and Captain America 2, Winter Soldier, to have people care enough about him as a character. Certainly by the end of the movie, you care about him more, but like I felt like there was more need from that. It relies heavily on the events of Avengers 2, which was the weaker of the two Avenger movies. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I enjoyed watching it, but
why do you hate Captain America so much?
I actually like Captain America.
Yeah,
I like Captain America because he is kind of like a vehicle for, criticism and like a kind of a nice analysis of like what the United States is and like some of the problems with the United States. It's a very clever way of like, let's make this character called Captain America, and it's like our way of kind of like questioning certain things lightly and kind of like looking at the problems that we have and like what are the problems with America and have him have this internal conflict of what America was when he joined the army and was part of the experiments, and then like what it's become in the time that's elapsed since.
I think they do a fantastic job of that. Like to counter it with the Dawn of Justice movie, like Bruce Wayne is this like right wing nut who he quotes like right wing politicians and stuff, and he's quite clearly supposed to.
You think he voted for Trump?
Oh,
Bruce
I know
Wayne,
he did.
Not
I know that Ben Affleck certainly didn't. But it's just Zack Snyder has no concept of imagery or subtlety, or like he just doesn't get that at all. He is
I think he did, and he's been like slowly losing it.
I don't know.
I'm even looking back at Watchmen. The one thing you can say about Watchmen, even if you didn't enjoy the movie itself, was that visually,
stunning.
It was like ripped out of the pages of the comic book.
Yeah,
Every single scene of it was a panel from the comic book. Like, it was just really well done. And the changes they made to the ending, like, I'm sorry, giant squids are dumb. Like, that's a dumb way to end the comic. Like, give me a break. I think the ending for the movie worked better for the movie.
I think so too, but they originally had planned a Terry Gilliam Watchmen movie where you should look up what his ending would have been, because it's unbelievably amazing.
Kind of like the Jodorowsky's Dune. if you've ever seen that documentary.
I haven't, but yeah, I am familiar with. He's the Swiss guy who designed all the things for it, right?
No. He's I'm gonna mess this up. He's a South American director who was famous for these like really trippy psychedelic films in the 70s, I think. The early 70s, the late 60s, early 70s. And one day, like one of his films did really well, and so like the studio was like, okay, what do you want to make? And he's like, I want to make Dune. And he had never seen Dune before.
Oh wow.
He had never read the book. He just wanted to do it because it was the first thing that came to mind. And so he gets like H.R. Giger. This was pre-Alien, pre-Star Wars.
H.R. Giger, he's the Swiss guy I was thinking of who he designed all of the things for it. For Alien and for AI and for a bunch of stuff. And he gets like you got to watch this documentary. He gets all these crazy people to build things for it and to create things. Salvador Dali is in the movie. No way.
And he's going to be in it. And he said he'd only do it if he was the highest paid actor in history. And so they quoted him an obscene amount of money per hour, but they only had a short scene in the film that was like less than a minute or something. Yeah. And he agreed to it because on paper, it would still say that like his fee would have been, whatever amount per hour. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's all this stuff, and it gets into like pre-production, and it's literally ready to film. And on almost the eve of like the first filming date, all of the sets have been started on, like they're being made. Some of them are ready, and the studio cancels it. Oh man. And the thing about it is that the storyboards were designed by like some of the most famous comic artists now in like the planet, and like artists and in general. And the storyboards for this in this book are like the Bible for modern sci-fi. There is no Star Wars without this book, because there are scenes ripped out of this book that are in Star Wars. And even today, like movies, like anybody who's making a sci-fi movie like has a copy of this book, like they have to, because there are scenes in this movie that are just like reproduced again and again and again in like countless other iterations of different films, as like people paying homage to this thing that it's literally like the Bible and the Holy Grail rolled into one of modern sci-fi.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
I love like how meta sci-fi is as a genre, like how self-referential it is. It's so good. But it just going back to Captain America, I think it didn't feel like a Captain America movie, but it felt like what I wanted. It felt like the kind of movie I wanted from Avengers 2, but also it leaves most of the power in Captain America's hands. Like I think it is mostly built around him. The revelation of Tony Stark's parents and stuff that happens felt more like an Iron Man movie. But at the end with I don't actually want to spoil it because some people mightn't have seen it yet, and it only came out this year. But I feel like at the end it just leaves the rest of the story and anything that could possibly happen more so in Captain America's hands than Tony Stark's. But I think that Robert Downey Jr., that is his best performance as Tony Stark. I think
so too.
Unreal in that movie. Like
he reached some levels of depth for that character that were sorely missing from especially from Iron Man 2, but even from Iron Man 3, like they really dug deep into that. And I think he actually does better in the Avenger movies, because much like Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, for instance, Pirates of the Caribbean 4 sucked not because it was a bad film, but because it was too much Johnny Depp. You know, you like it, like that character, much like Tony Stark, is meant to be the side character. Like it worked for for Iron Man 1 because like he is the rock star, right? But over and over again, it's like the same kind of gags and the same, like you can only listen to like quote unquote like witty, intelligent sarcasm so much before it starts to get abrasive.
Yeah, I have a have a problem with that being the norm in, like, it's in everything now. I have this thing that I say that, like, everything is Sherlock Holmes now. Every protagonist is Sherlock Holmes. Like,
The new Sherlock Holmes.
yeah, the new one. Like, and Robert Downey Jr. has everything to do with that too. But it's like,
yes,
Harvey Specter and Mike Ross from Suits, they're both Sherlock Holmes, and well, Harvey more so. Like, he's just, I don't know. There's this assumption that because you are intelligent,
you're a dick.
Yeah, you're literally not able to hold that intelligence inside you. You have to be brutally honest with people, no matter how much it'll affect your relationships.
Like, everybody has some sort of, like, mild autism or something.
Yes.
It's like, you can't be that smart without having social anxiety and, like, problems with expressing yourself in public.
It's a trope now that's prevalent in, like, most things that involve a male protagonist. I think you see it. Like, I don't know. Were there any other movies you want to talk about from 2016 that came out?
How could we not talk about Deadpool?
I haven't seen Deadpool.
What?
I do this thing where I am a massive dickhead sometimes about certain things.
Oh, you'd love Deadpool.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, it took me like 4 years to watch Breaking Bad because I was so
I haven't
sick.
seen Breaking Bad.
All right, but is there a reason for that? Is it because you're sick of people coming up to you and saying, "Hey, man, you should check out Breaking Bad"? Like,
that was part of it, but it was also, like, just finding the time.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad's also, like, not a, like, 2-hour movie though.
No, true, but like, I don't know. I can't stand when people insist that I watch something, and it's not, you know what? Like, I'd
say hold off on Deadpool until that moment when you're really feeling the superhero film fatigue that a lot of us are feeling, and in that moment, that's when you should watch it. But save it for that.
The thing I counter that with is, all right, he breaks the fourth wall. We all know that. It's what everyone says about Deadpool, is you won't believe how many walls he breaks. But, like, every superhero does that now. Like, Chris Pratt does it or the bow and arrow guy, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner. Like, he does it in the Avengers too, when she's like, the girl is like, "Oh, I can't do it," or whatever. "This is ridiculous." And he's like, "Look, everything is ridiculous. There's flying aliens outside and I've got a bow and arrow." And it's like, Jesus, could you just look into the camera a little bit more while you nod?
Yeah.
Like, shut up. I don't
know.
No,
I think that,
like, it's
the thing about, I wouldn't say, I know a lot of people talk about that as, like, the draw for Deadpool, but I think the draw is actually how clever the writing was for that film, because at the same time that it's stupid and crass and, like, rude and everything, like, Deadpool has always been, like, a send up of other comics. Like, it actively is poking fun of the genre. That's what it's a parody. Like, that's what that character was kind of, like, designed to do. And I don't think they'll be able to do it necessarily for the second film. I think this might be like a one-off in terms of, like, how good it was at it. But everybody in it was just so good at kind of poking fun at superhero films in a way that actually alleviated a lot of the fatigue that I was feeling for watching them. In a really positive way, weirdly. And I think it's actually probably one of the better origin stories that we've seen for a superhero in terms of writing. It's actually like a decent romance movie.
Yeah, I really, really liked that advert they did, the trailer that was just based on the romance part.
Yeah.
That was so clever. Like, I really enjoyed
that. But that feeling from that trailer is in the movie. It's weird. Like, it crosses so many kind of borders that shouldn't be overlapping, but they are in the film, and I think it does a good job. I don't want to really, like, talk about it too much because, like, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm not going to pressure you into it because I know what that feels like. But at some point, I'm telling you, like, if you're ever feeling that fatigue, if you ever come out of, you know what, save it for after Justice League, when you come out of that movie and you're like, God damn it.
Okay, I will.
I honestly hope Justice League is good, but
I honestly will never watch it. No, I'm kidding, but I won't go to the cinema to see it. Definitely not.
Yeah. Also, I mean, like, Rogue One came out this year. We can't really talk about it too much because we have something in the pipeline, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think, actually, didn't we openly talk about it on the Christmas one?
Don't tell them.
Yeah, we want to do a separate thing on that, but
all about Rogue One.
I will say that Rogue One is a movie that was released in 2016, and that is a fact. So, come at me, haters.
There are stars.
Yes.
And there are wars. And a rogue thing happens, and there's only one of them.
One rogue thing, yeah.
One rogue thing. It was pretty cool.
I think that's nicely summarized. We don't need to do the episode now, so that's handy.
That was the episode.
Get that out of the way.
There's a couple other things that came out. Like Hail Caesar came out. I don't know if you saw that movie.
I didn't, but I actually really wanted to, and then
I love the Coen Brothers.
Yeah, they're the best. I completely forgot that it came out. Like, it completely slipped my mind until earlier when I was Googling the highest grossing movies of the year, and I was like,
Brilliant movie.
Yeah,
it's about film, and it's in such a great way. It's really great.
Their style, everyone says it, and it's obvious, but they're so unique, and like only they can do it, and they do it so well. Like I
love how their movies just end abruptly, like in mid sentence.
I know, yeah. They're great.
We should end the podcast this way. Just like at the end of the podcast, just cut it off. Like we'll keep talking, we'll do a proper ending, but then just cut it off, and it'll be a nice little throwback to this comment that we'll forget about, and you'll forget to do it.
Yeah, in all probability, that's what'll happen.
I know you haven't seen Arrival yet, but Arrival was fantastic.
Yeah,
and what
I'm
a
really
symphony
looking
of a
forward
film.
to seeing it.
I was telling you this before we started recording, and it's not a spoiler at all, so you don't have to cover your ears if you haven't seen it. But like, what this movie does, that's absolutely, it blew my mind because I've never seen it done like this before. Is that at the moment that they're discovering something, they give you that sense of discovery as well. So like, they've synchronized the film in such a way that as you have that moment, that like, oh, wait a minute moment, that aha moment that you get sometimes when you're watching a film and you understand something that you didn't understand before about the plot. They give that to you, and the characters are experiencing that at the exact same moment. So you feel very involved in what's happening, and it's just really beautifully done.
Yeah. It looks so good as well. Like, I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah. Just very minimalist in a lot of ways, but in a beautiful way. I appreciate that level of minimalism because it forces the writing to be good, and the performances to be good, and the dialogue to be good, and the camera work to be good, and it's so good. The sound engineering in this film is phenomenal. Unlike Batman vs Superman. And then we got stuff like Zootopia also, right? Like that was a pretty awesome kids movie. Justine and I went to go see that, and it was a really fun time. I enjoyed it a lot.
I didn't see it, but it is the highest rated and the most critically acclaimed movie that came out this year, so that
was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Did you see 10 Cloverfield Lane?
I didn't. I really wanted to, and for whatever reason, I just haven't gotten to it yet.
I really, really, really liked it.
I love John Goodman. There's something about that man's voice that just is like melted butter.
He's great in this movie too. Like really, really good.
Just like melted butter in trees. You get what I mean though? Like there's something in that analogy.
There's some semblance of something.
Just like old oak and melted butter.
I'm kind of hungry after.
And just like the rumbling of thunder.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. That aspect of it is especially prevalent in 10 Cloverfield Lane.
I wish I could do his voice, but I can't.
Yeah. He's one of the voices in Monsters, Inc., right?
Is he Sully?
I think no. Yeah, he is, and Billy Crystal is the other guy.
Billy Crystal.
What a guy.
What a guy.
There was London.
Nice Guys came out. You just reminded me.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen it, but
I haven't seen it, but everybody's talking about how awesome that movie was.
Yeah, one of my friends whose opinion matters said that it was great, so
it looked really funny.
Yeah, I really like The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, which has nothing to do with this movie, but I mean they're both.
I get the idea though, that. Suicide Squad. No,
garbage. I could talk at length. I could do an entire podcast about what's wrong with that movie, but you know, whatever. I sort of get why if you're a fan of it, if you're a fan of that thing, that you would like it because there's some nice things in it, but.
But even people who were fans of the thing, weren't fans of the thing.
I would like to see the movie that they left on the chopping room floor.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that, like, the original cut was probably interesting. at the very least interesting. I'm not saying it was good.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
The movie was recut by it was a reaction to what happened with Batman versus Superman, right?
Yep.
Like people didn't like the tone of Batman versus Superman. They were expecting more Marvel-y kind of like comic relief and humor to be coursing through that. And so they recut the trailers of Suicide Squad and people responded really, really well to them because you had like oh my God, what's her name? Blackheart. Well, I don't give a damn about my bad reputation, that song. And you had like all those like fun, like poppy, rocky songs happening. You had Queen, and they made the movie look fun. It looked like this is going to be their Guardians of the Galaxy. It's their weird bet on this film that they're doing, and they're gonna throw the dice, and it's going to be awesome. And it wasn't, and it became really clear that the movie had been recut as a reaction to what happened with Batman vs. Superman, which is unfortunate because there might have been a more interesting movie in there. If not a good movie, at least a movie that actually felt cohesive.
It was so obvious when you were watching it that was the case too. Like, they introduced Will Smith at the very, very start. And then they reintroduced him with Kanye West as his theme music. And I will say the best thing about the movie by far was the soundtrack. So credit to whoever put that Spotify playlist together. Whatever algorithm chewed up and spat out that fucking playlist, that was great.
Fun action.
Yeah. But the fact that Slipknot didn't even get an intro and he was the first one to die, like, did anybody not see that coming? Ridiculous. There was also London Has Fallen, which is, Gerard Butler's the sequel to the classic Olympus Has Fallen, which is the best movie ever made. Now, I watched London Has Fallen, and it was complete garbage, but there's something so enjoyable to me about watching Gerard Butler pretending to be American. It reminds me of what we spoke about in the Christmas one.
There's just something enjoying about watching Gerard Butler.
Yeah, he's the man.
I'm sorry, I'm straight. And that man he gives me some tingles. He's a gorgeous man.
Wish he was a better actor, to be honest.
It depends what he's in. Did you watch him in Rock and Rolla?
Yes, I did.
I liked him in Rock and Rolla.
He was good in that.
I thought that was, yeah.
He's in a movie
he's
called...
He's good when he's Scottish.
Oh, yeah, he is, because he's in a movie called Dear Frankie. It's like an independent art movie. Have you seen that movie?
No, but I remember watching the trailer for it and wanting to see it.
Wow, because I've never actually met another human who's seen it, but I'm sure that they're out there. It's a great movie. It's just really good. People should watch it. It will make them happy.
I'm gonna write that down.
What else? There was Ghostbusters, which I don't think we should talk about because then we'd be letting the feminists win. Am I right?
Oh my God. Yeah. You know what? Like people gotta stop.
Yeah,
like
I don't understand at all. Like,
was it an amazing movie? No.
It was fine.
But it was it was a solid 6.5 to 7.5 movie. Like, I don't understand. Like, way worse thing. People were treating it like it was worse than Suicide Squad and worse than not to solely crap on DC, but like their offerings this year. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But there were plenty of bad movies. Like I think there are some arguments for Ghostbusters being a stronger movie than Star Trek Beyond in terms of the way that it respects the source material.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It was. And that's a fact, too, because Star Trek Beyond is not a Star Trek movie at all. Like, other than the fact...
It's a fun ride, but like...
Yeah. It's a Fast and Furious movie set in the Star Trek universe. Space, yeah. But, come on, like... Ghostbusters was fine. Like, you'd really... I don't know. I mean, the fact that before it even had a major release, it was like a 3.7 on IMDb, and like, when they looked at the analytics... Mainly the people who had voted it down were males between the age of 16 and 25. It's like, just come on, lads. Could you just...
Were we talking about Gamergate earlier?
Yeah. There's another thing I want to say about Gamergate, because I think we're at a point in the podcast where anyone who disagrees with everything I say has already stopped listening. But Anita Sarkeesian and her feminist frequency thing... is I think it's really good and it's really important because it's one of the only pieces of gaming journalism where they review and respect gaming as actual art. Like, at no point does she say this is terrible, because that's not what she's saying. She's saying these games are enjoyable, but look at these tropes that they continue to throw out time and time again. We need to move past this if we want to be considered a legitimate legitimate art form. But everyone is just, this bitch is trying to tell me what. Fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. Like.
I totally agree, and it's old hat, you know. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, like I can understand, not that I agree with in any way, but I can understand why people would be tired of the feminist movement, particularly like young guys who are in the.
I get it, but here's the thing: 2016 is the year where critical thought was reframed as whining.
Yes, I know.
Some people are whining, okay? Like, I get it, like, and whining is annoying, but there's a difference between criticism and critical thought and whining, and they're not the same thing, and you can't treat them as the same thing, and you can't dismiss stuff in that way. You know, it's you know, whether or not you agree with something. And here's a fun fact that people don't often realize, and it might be news to some people. Hopefully not of this podcast, because I think you have a wonderful audience, and I've interacted with some of them, and they're terrific. But you know, like, you can enjoy something and be critical of it at the same time.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, like, you can have a blast with something. Something could be your favorite thing in the world. Like, I loved the hell out of Rogue One. Rogue One was fantastic. That film has quite a few problems with it. You know, they're like, some of them are small, some of them are a bit larger, some of them I have serious questions about what the studio was doing, but you know, that doesn't stop it from being a kick-ass movie. That was a lot of fun. And the same thing happens with like feminist criticisms of things, and not just, and here's the other thing, feminist criticisms, also, and not to get like too hung up on this, but you know, as you said, people who didn't agree probably left already. Yeah. Is that, the thing about feminist criticism is that it affects men as well. Because guess what? Like, all of the tropes of like the Gears of War. Oh, we didn't talk about that. Gears of War was apparently pretty good. Anyway, the trope of like the Gears of War, like meathead, like muscle man, white, like Caucasian, like giant, superhero, good guy. Like, that's also something that feminist criticism talks about, because it's not fair to anybody. Like, patriarchy affects everybody, you know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to like throw out like these terms that are probably going to have people asking you to never have me on as a guest again. But like, you know, like, it affects all of us. Like, if we, you know, it's just the way that it's phrased, people jump on it, you know?
Yeah, gender stereotypes are bullshit. That's
all of them. Yeah. That's the thing, is that all of them are.
Yeah, and I've mentioned that before.
That's all people are saying. That's all people are saying, is that like some stuff is bullshit. That's, you know, like, and we got to call out the bullshit when we see the bullshit.
I'm sick of having these cultural proxy wars. Like, I hate the fact that Ghostbusters becomes a Gamergate discussion again. Like,
look what happened to Leslie Jones.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
That was horrible. She's a funny woman. She's super funny. She's great.
Yeah, it's weird. I've been trying to sort of study that thing that's happening. So that I can do a podcast about it, and I'm having such a tough time, like, sort of getting past my own like tribal, you know, biases, but I just can't really get into that zone and find out why so many, like, there are people whose intelligence is beyond doubt to me, people whose opinions that I really respect, who are like, I don't think Milo should have been banned at all, and it's just whatever. I don't want to talk about it anymore, but
yeah,
it's weird.
But I think the point is that Ghostbusters was a decent film. It was a good film.
It was fun,
and it was fine, you know, like, and you didn't have to like it, you didn't have to hate it, and guess what? That's the same thing with everything else. And just because other people don't like what you like doesn't mean that you're wrong, you know. Yeah. You can enjoy stuff and also be critical of it. That being said, Independence Day, worst film of the year.
I didn't see it because why would I?
I mean, honestly, like, worse. I'd say probably worse than Suicide Squad.
Yeah,
it's.
I mean, I'm not surprised to learn that at all. I'll finish off movie talk with two movies that I think are great, that are sort of low-key releases that you guys should check out. Green Room being the first one. It's a movie, like, it's been billed as a horror, but it's not really a horror movie. It's about a punk band who they're a really, really low budget punk band. They're traveling around looking for a gig, and they end up getting a gig at a Nazi like skinhead event. And
Super fun.
They kind of have to do it because they literally need the food for petrol to get home. And they end up witnessing a murder, and they're not allowed to leave. And Patrick Stewart plays King.
Oh my god, that's that movie?
Yes.
Holy shit, yeah. Oh my god, I love Pat Stew.
Have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen it.
Oh.
I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, excuse me, what is Patrick Stewart playing?
It's so good. And Anton Yelchin is in it, and he is one of the people that 2016 claimed this year, which was pretty sad. But because I really like him. I really like Alpha Dog. I thought that was an awesome movie. But yeah, Green Room, like, oh, check it out. It's very violent, but not in a gratuitous way, like more in a very realistic and visceral way. I don't know. It was really, really good. And another one is Hell or High Water, which is it has got Ben Foster and the other guy whose name I've forgotten because I'm terrible, but he puts in a surprisingly amazing performance, whatever his name is. And it's just a really, really good movie. It's about, like, it's sort of built off the back of the financial crisis and how that affects people who don't usually get a voice in movies, like the sort of, you know, the white working class guys who are just not often portrayed very well in movies, or they're not really ever portrayed in a sympathetic kind of light either. But it's a really, really good movie. It's a bank heist movie, but it's very good. It's Chris Pine. He's the main guy in it, and he is just surprisingly brilliant in it.
I think he's actually a good actor who just has the misfortune of being typecast a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, I think Ryan Gosling has really fallen into that too in the last while.
Well, we'll see next year with Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Looks good. Quick shout out to Fantastic Beasts. Interesting first foray into what could be done with the Harry Potter universe. If any of you guys are into that, then
I haven't seen it, but I've heard mixed things about it.
It's pretty good. Like, it's her first foray into screenwriting. I like the idea of expanding that universe. There's an author that I really I loved. I still love. He passed away, unfortunately. Oh my god, did he pass away in 2016? I think he passed away last year. Terry Pratchett, and he has the Discworld series.
It was last year.
It was last year, yeah. And you know, he had this thing where he created a universe and he populated it with characters and then told stories about the characters. And so his different series all happened within the same world. And I wish that J.K. Rowling would do kind of the same thing with Harry Potter, because awesome. Harry Potter's the reason that I read. And then I've mentioned it on my podcast before, but like, it's Justine and I read because of that. And like, she's an English major and I'm an English minor. And, you know, we have kind of like a debt, I guess, to that. But it's such a fascinating kind of world that she's constructed, and I think this can only get better and more interesting as it continues, especially because she's writing it. And then also X-Men Apocalypse, which wasn't excellent, and it wasn't. I don't even know if it was good. It was all right, but I feel like that was the last thing that had to happen before Logan, which looks like a very different type of movie, and I'm very excited for that next year.
The trailer looked amazing for that.
Very different type of movie.
Yeah. I didn't see the X-Men movie. I wanted to see it because I loved the one that came before it, the Days of Future Past. But
that was really good.
I just didn't get around to watching Apocalypse. But
yeah, I have to say I really love Oscar Isaac. Fell in love with him in Star Wars. He was really charismatic, really kind of like floated in that line between Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. A really great interaction with John Boyega as well. And I saw, after that, I saw the other Coen Brothers movie. Oh my god.
I don't even
know. It was about the musician. Oh, it'll come to me. He plays a musician in it, and that was fantastic.
Huh. I haven't even heard of that one.
Llewyn Davis. Inside Llewyn Davis.
Wow, I never even heard of it. That's really weird for me.
It's a really awesome. It's if you like Coen Brothers, then it's a really great film.
Yeah.
And I went to see X-Men Apocalypse mainly. I'm not gonna lie, because of him, because I was like, this guy's got some good range. Like, I want to see what he does here. And again, I think it's just a case of like writing and direction, kind of like taking an actor and not using them to their full potential.
Yeah, he's great in Drive, and he's great in Ex Machina too. Two completely.
Oh my god, yeah! How can I forget Ex Machina? He was. You know how I could forget Ex Machina? Because he's so different in that movie.
Yeah, he completely is.
That, holy shit. He's an excellent actor. I'm glad that he's kind of breaking out.
Yeah, me too. I hate, though, that he says we got company twice in Star Wars The Force Awakens.
Like, that's the...
I know.
I hate to say it, but, like, J.J. Abrams... there's a lot of good things that come with J.J. Abrams, and then there's like stuff like that that kind of stuff that comes with it too. And how much of that was studio involvement, and I doubt that Oscar Isaac made the decision to necessarily say that line so many times.
No, I think Oscar Isaac, if he had any control of it, would have changed that.
There's also the way that films are made. They shoot scenes multiple times, and sometimes actors ad-lib lines, and occasionally what happens is that you have them saying different things, and the take that was good was the one where he said, "We've got company," and then it happened somewhere else as well, and maybe the people people make mistakes editing films all the time, so
yeah.
Or something happened with the other shots, right? Like, this stuff happens. So, like, it might have been an accident, or it might have just been the most usable footage. Like, maybe you asked J.J. Abrams, and he's like, "Yeah, we're not a fan of that." But like, it was the other scenes. Like, there was something that there was like a person in the background who wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Or you could see the mic, or like, well, I don't know. Like, any number of things can happen. So it could be that.
Can you imagine Oscar Isaac like messing up that line over and over, like just not able to do it? Should we move into music from 2016?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to let you drive this one.
Okay, so the year started off pretty strong because Beyonce kind of dropped Lemonade out of nowhere, and that was pretty great. I'm not like...
She put out a lemonade stand on the side of the street. She sold her album, and I mean, like, how many copies did she sell? It was pretty impressive. Although the little girl down the street did get shafted, and I think she has a bit of a legal case. But
she was charging like 25 cents for hers. Whereas
I know, right?
Beyonce's was on torrents for free. Anyway, I'm not like the biggest Beyonce fan in the world, but I do occasionally take a step back and just think, what a phenomenal person. Like, I'm very glad that I exist in the same time that she exists, because I think she's outrageously talented. She's multi-talented too. I really wish that she would do more movies, because she's actually a really good actor. But yeah, like, she releases great albums, and Lemonade was one of them. I don't really know what my favorite song would be. I really like the one with James Blake and the one with Kendrick Lamar. I wasn't actually too keen on Formation, but I was quite happy when, like, to hear the rest of the album and that it didn't flow the same way that song does, because that's a bit, like, too far into that kind of music that I just can't
I liked that it was an album.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't get done a lot now. There's few bands, and most of them are smaller, who like put out albums. Like Lemonade had a cohesive, like it or hate it, like, or are indifferent to it. It had a kind of cohesive
and I would say
thought
that
to it.
Rihanna's Auntie did the same thing. It wasn't really great, but it was like the first Rihanna album that sounds like an album, and it is thematic and it's atmospheric throughout, and it references different parts and different songs from different tracks on the album, and it's really good. Like, it was a really good step for her career, because she's always been, like, to music critics, kind of a throwaway artist, and I think now she's finally getting recognition as a legitimate, like, force in the industry beyond...
Would you say her force is awakening?
Oh, yes, I absolutely would.
I think that, I was just briefly talking about criticism. Also, there's a thing that happens with Beyonce, and it gets poked fun of a lot, but there are a lot of Beyonce evangelists. And let me tell you, just because somebody has a criticism of Beyonce does not mean that they're a horrible person, and you don't have to yell at me.
It's weird, though, because I feel compelled to, like, shut anyone down that has anything bad to say about her.
But the thing is, like, I think that's the thing, is that, and it's almost like these moments where I sort of, like, sympathize with, like, right-wing people, because my criticisms of her aren't because they're not right wing in any way, and they're not because she's a woman. Like, I have genuine like artistic criticisms
They're
of
because she's
Beyonce.
black, aren't they?
No, it's because her name starts with a B.
Yeah.
No,
fair.
it's because I have my own artistic criticisms in terms of like music and in terms of lyric, and then in terms of like certain contradictions in things that she says and she does and things that she preaches sometimes. But I think they're small criticisms, and they're not nitpicky, but like they're not like necessarily negative. They're just kind of like questions that I would like to sit down and ask her one day, kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
sometimes when you bring those up, people jump on top of you as if you were, you know, saying that that her place was in the kitchen or something. And it's like, that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, I'm glad that she's out there. I'm glad that that like there's these, that young women have people like Beyonce to look up to. Like, don't get me wrong, man. Like, this is excellent. But, you know, don't just jump down somebody's throat because they have a criticism of Beyonce. Just like, she's the queen bee, she cannot be spoken ill of. Like, come on. Like, everybody can be criticized.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like I said, I don't really think, like, I don't get Formation. I don't get what's good about that song. Like, I don't, it just doesn't.
But there you go. Like, people will jump down your throat for that.
None of my listeners.
None of your listeners will.
No, I'm sure people will.
But like, there are these kind of, and it's not just Beyonce. Like, there's these evangelists for these artists, and sometimes for even like for, it happens with podcasters too. Like, somebody says something, and somewhere else somebody says something else, and it becomes like a whole thing.
Yeah, I have experienced this on a very small scale, but I used to do these videos called Top 5 Tweets, where I would like talk about 5 tweets that a person did and like really sarcastically deconstruct them, where it sounds like I'm praising them, but I'm actually like not doing that at all. Mm-hmm. And so there was always a divide between people who got it and people who didn't. And the people who didn't get it would say stuff like, "What the fuck is this? Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. There's no way that..." And then the people who got it would be like, "Actually, you moron," and stuff. And it was so entertaining. But yeah, like I've had people sort of rigorously jump to my defense before, and I like it. No, but...
I like it too, but sometimes it can be, when it goes too far and you realize that you have absolutely no control over those people.
It's like censorship almost. Like, it's,
you realize that it's kind of like a lot of damage can be done.
Yeah.
And it's not a good thing.
And it affects the way people view you as well. Exactly.
Well, and that's why I don't know if you ever, I think I mentioned it on the other episode that we did, but the Kind of Funny podcasts. Kind of Funny is like made up of a group of guys who left from IGN and created their own company, and they can be seen through like Patreon and all of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
But their whole mantra is like creating like a positive community, and they'll flat out call out people. Like, if somebody they do like live shows over Twitch also, and if somebody says something in the chat that they don't like, they don't just like cut that person off. They call them out and they tell them, like, if you're supporting us on Patreon, take your money back. We don't want it, because we don't want people like here. Like, it's okay to be like open and criticism, but if like you're being like racist or homophobic or like it's about creating like these like intelligent communities that are able to like discuss things without going to extremes. Like, internet is kind of like a place of extremes, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. It's where you become aware of so many things that.
So many things.
Yeah, just so many. Yeah, we'll just leave it there. I guess another album that came out that I really enjoyed was Deftones. They're a band that like never quite grew out of, even though I grew out of the whole new metal thing. But they've been around since '95, and
something like that. They
sort of pioneered the new metal scene, I think. I don't think that's too outrageous to say, but their album Adrenaline and Around the Fur, they did a lot for that sound that became really popular after, that people piggybacked off.
Yeah.
But they really like sort of their self-titled album I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed White Pony, and then they released an album called Saturday Night Wrist, and I didn't really think it was that good, but after that they really hit form again. Like, they had Diamond Eyes, which was great, Koi no Yokan in 2012, which was great, and then Gore, which I really, really enjoyed. And they have really found their sound, and they've gotten really comfortable with it, and then they've been adventurous enough to go outside of that too. And it's really great to see a band like that are still on form and that are getting recognition for, making great albums. Like it's
and who still sound like themselves, even though they've evolved.
Totally,
that's one of those things where it's like a Radiohead still sounds like Radiohead, even though they've changed quite drastically. There's just like bands that still sound like them. They have the essence of them. And I know this is like a weird example, but like of something that didn't happen like that. But Coldplay was always criticized for having the same sound.
Yeah.
And they're like, every Coldplay song sounds the same. And then when they did change their sound, everybody hated it. And now Coldplay has new fans that listen to their new stuff and old fans that only listen to their old stuff. And it's like these bands that create a kind of divide. And, I'm not huge on the Deftones, but I do really I respect them. I have a lot of respect for them, especially, was it their drummer, who had the really serious accident or their bassist? The bassist. Yeah. And they've really been able to hold stuff together. They took a bit of hiatus for that, and then they did what they needed to do. And, they have a methodology and they stuck to it, and they have a sound that is uniquely theirs. I think
completely. There's nothing else that's like it at all. Like it is truly their own sound, and it's laced with these like sort of, I don't know, clunky atmospheric like horror vibes almost. And I get that. It's very, very good. They've
got a lot of texture to their sound.
Yes, completely. Yeah, and it sort of it shape shifts as well, but still sounds.
You've watched it change?
Yes. Very nice reference. Very, very good.
The one song I know.
Really? You don't know
the one song I know the title of.
Oh, okay. Did you listen to A Moon-Shaped Pool, Radiohead's album?
Yeah, I did. I really liked it. I feel more and more with their albums, what's happening is I have to listen to it more than once.
Yeah, definitely.
To really get into it. Because they're very experimental, I think more and more it's one of those things that you have to revisit. I really liked it the first time around, but when I go back to it, I find what's happening with Radiohead for me is that I'll listen to it and I'll be like, man, but there isn't a single on this album. And then one of two things happen, kind of. The first thing is I realized that there doesn't really need to be. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is that when you listen to it over and over again, there are songs that stand out, and they're not necessarily the ones that had the music videos made for them and are the quote unquote singles, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of different for everybody.
I have one criticism of it, and it's the silliest criticism ever, but it affects the way I listen to the album. Mm-hmm. So all of the tracks on the album are in alphabetical order, and that bugs me so hard. It somehow takes away the fact that it's an album to me. They couldn't be bothered to make a running order that makes sense thematically. And instead they were here's the tracks in alphabetical order. And I know that that's not what it is, and I know that they're also not trying to make some kind of pretentious statement or whatever, but...
No, well, I think the thing is that, Radiohead doesn't do anything by accident. Everything is done on purpose, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, and, but
there's a reason for why this album is in alphabetical order, and the crazy thing about Radiohead is you might not find out what that is for 2 more albums.
I know, but it bugs me. It affects the way I listen to the album now. I need it to be... I don't know. I need my albums to be cohesive and feel like a unit and feel like one piece of art. You know what I mean? One complete thing.
Was it okay? No, hang on. It was the King of Limbs. If you played it with one of the other albums, I think it was in Rainbows. It might have been.
It was in Rainbows and OK Computer, but that.
In Rainbows.
But that whole theory doesn't actually hold up. It's only
it doesn't.
It's only 2 songs that fade into each other beautifully, and the reason for that was that
it's the thing with the Kojima trailer with the baby disappearing. It's you synced it to the baby disappearing, so of course that shows up.
Yeah, it's not it's a great theory, and it's great to just think about a band doing that, but it doesn't really hold up to reality, like to what actually
that part
happened.
of it doesn't hold up, but the fact that the two albums are connected somehow is true, and Tom York has said as much, that the two albums are connected. So there's little tidbits here and there that they leave, and I think like I can understand why, because it's kind of like almost like an OCD kind of like, oh, why is it in alphabetical order? Like I get it. But at the same time, I almost kind of like have to. They've been around for so long, and they've been doing this for so long, and they're so good at what they do that I'm like, that was on purpose, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, you're right. Like they are so calculating, but I don't know what it is. Like it's hard to. It sounds so silly, but it's all of my favorite albums are albums that represent one creation, like one theme, like that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I feel like this album just loses me slightly because of the track listing. And I know how shallow and superficial that is, but it just,
Just don't look at the track list.
Yeah, it's the only way.
Just let the music play.
Chance the Rapper released a mixtape called Coloring Book, and it was phenomenal. And I'm so happy that he did it, because I think it's basically this, like, it's called a coloring book, and it is really colorful. Like, it's so like biblical, and
nice.
It's really, really, really positive music that, like, it doesn't take shots at anyone. There's not much negativity on there. It's just a great album to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mixtape technically, but like, come on, it's an album.
Right.
But yeah, the tracks on there are so uplifting, and I just really recommend anyone listen to it. I don't even think you have to be a hip hop fan. It's just the song. They're very songy. You know what I mean? Like they're less rap and more like sonically driven. And
I'm gonna have to check that out, because like you're hitting some. I'm not big into rap, and I'm not big into hip hop, but like you're hitting the things about hip hop that I do like with that. So I'm gonna have to give it a listen.
It's got a lot of soul, I think, is the best thing to say about it.
Okay, you won me over.
Okay. Yeah, no, do check it out though. It's really good.
Speaking of soul, didn't De La Soul put out a new album randomly?
Yes, I think so. Because they headlined some festival that I was at too, I think.
Just out of nowhere, they put out a new album. Nobody was expecting that.
You've got to love when people do that.
It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we made this.
In fact, Run the Jewels, their album was not supposed to come out until the 13th of January, and they released it on Christmas Day. So
that's nice.
And it's an awesome album, and they are among the greatest at the moment, I think. I want to give a shout out to an unknown band that I played one time on the podcast called Camp Cope. They're an Australian like girl band, and
nice.
They are phenomenal. It's just, I mean, it's like fairly basic indie sounding music, but the lyrics are so compelling and so powerful. Like I can't even explain it, but there's a song on there called West Side Story, and if you just listen to the second half of that song, and if you don't feel something, I will give you your minutes back. There's another track on there called Lost Season 1, and it hit me like it was like I had been headbutted by a planet after I listened to that song. I don't know why. Just
nice.
The lyrics really, really spoke to me, and it made me feel really sad, but also made me click repeat on it. And I don't repeat songs. I have to listen to albums only, because I'm incredibly like obsessive compulsive about that kind of thing. But this song just really struck a chord with me. There was some other albums like the people have already heard me talking about, like Drake's Views album, which was not as good as I wanted it to be, and it turned out to be this bloated mess that didn't really flow very well, and was not representative of the type of music he was making in the build-up to that album, because during that build-up he was putting out amazing tracks that they didn't even have choruses, because he's so good that the verses themselves are the hooks, and the beat switches in the middle, and it becomes a whole nother song, and like he's just on form. Like, he's peaking, and it's great, but he just cannot make a good album, and it irks me, because I love him so much, and I love his music so much, but his albums are so tiring to listen to sometimes, because they're just littered with this garbage that, I don't know, but it sells well. It was one of the highest selling albums of the year. Also, there's a rapper called Future who put out like 13 albums or something like that, and they were all pretty good. Just to rattle through some more, James Blake, The Color in Everything was pretty good. I didn't really know what to expect from it, because his music is a little bit strange to me, but it was a decent album, and probably his most accessible one so far. Do you know a band called The Naked and Famous?
I feel like I've heard the name before, but to be honest, I've never heard them.
They have a song called Young Blood, which I'm sure you probably heard during the summer of 2014. But
That sounds familiar.
they're awesome, and their album from this year was awesome too. I don't really know what else that I really wanted to talk about in music. Like there was.
I had one and I lost it. I'm gonna try to find it. But keep going.
There's a punk rock band called Against Me, and I love them. I love all their albums, but they released an album called Shapeshift with Me, and it sort of continues on from where Transgender Dysphoria Blues left off, and it's a lot more rounded than that album. It's more well put together, and it's got a better production, I think. And it's just as good in many ways. I kind of prefer Transgender Dysphoria Blues, but Shapeshift with Me is still really good, and it's definitely worth the listen. There's a song on there called Tree Tree Tree, which is unfortunate for me to have to say out loud, but if you need a reference or whatever, go check out that song and then decide if you want to listen to the rest of the album or not. And then there's a band called Beach Slang, who are like this alternative sort of, I don't really even know. They bang things really loudly, and that's great. And they had an album called A Loud Bash of Teenage Feelings, and it's great. Do you know Japan Droids? They're a Canadian band.
I don't think I've ever heard them. What kind of music do they play?
Sort of like what I just described about Beach Slang. It's like they...
Oh, okay.
But they're great. But Beach Slang have sort of piggybacked off their sound a little bit, which is really hard to replicate. But Japan Droids have another album coming out in like 2 weeks, and I'm so excited for it because it's their first one in like 5 years, I think, now. So yeah, that was me quickly rattling off. Kendrick Lamar released Untitled Unmastered. It wasn't really an album, but it was very good and totally worth listening to if anyone, cares about my opinions about music. It
wasn't the one that I was going to mention. I can't remember what I was going to actually say, but I did want to shout out the new Childish Gambino album, because Childish Gambino put out a funk album, and it's actually really interesting.
Really?
It's different from... I know a lot of people find Childish Gambino kind of abrasive, but this album is kind of musically mature and really... It's weird that it kind of feels like it goes along with Atlanta, his show that he's doing. They're kind of two separate personas, though. Like Childish Gambino and Donald Glover, they seem like very different entities.
Yeah,
but
I'd agree with that.
Within like Atlanta and this new album, like there is like this weird overlap of, because Atlanta is kind of about the music industry, right? And it's funny in its way, but it's also it's more serious than stuff that we're used to seeing Donald Glover in. And I just find it interesting that like I wasn't a fan of his music, and I'm a fan of him, but he puts out this funk album, and I really like funk. And I thought it was really interesting, so check that out, because it's if you're not a big Childish Gambino fan, then you'll find it interesting, I hope. And if you are a Childish Gambino fan, then you'll probably still find it interesting, because he's weird and he does weird stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of his at all, but I'm also not a big fan of funk music, so I think it might be a bad idea for me to listen to it, because it might just push me away that little bit more. Whereas
but it's not like traditional funk, like it's funk with like an interesting kind of a twist to it. Also, weirdly, he puts out a funk album the same year that it's announced that he's going to be playing Lando Calrissian. So
yeah,
I feel like he just needs to let the mustache grow in, and he'll be ready to go.
I'm so happy that he's doing that.
Oh, that's like the last thing that had me like really on board for because I was kind of really questioning the Han Solo movie decision. And then they announced that what's his name, Heinrich Ehrenreich?
I don't know, but
whatever.
I'm just so glad it's not Miles Teller, because I wouldn't watch it if.
Well, this guy's in Hail Caesar. He plays like a singing cowboy.
All right.
And it's very it's not a Han Solo performance, but that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's also good that he's not like a really huge, well-known actor. But he did a really good job in that film, and I feel like if he can get the swagger right, like the kind of effortlessness of Harrison Ford's performance, and if they can get his hair right,
Yeah.
because his hair doesn't look like Harrison Ford's, but that's like a minor thing, then he could potentially nail it. But the second that, and well, the other thing that was the Rogue One trailers and then Rogue One coming out has me, more convinced than ever that Star Wars is in good hands with Disney and with Kathleen Kennedy. It's Lawrence Kasdan wrote the script for it, so it's the same guy who did Empire, Return of the Jedi, and now Force Awakens is writing the movie. It's been described as kind of like a heist slash cowboy film, like heist slash Western, which, I mean, there's a lot of Western influences in the original Star Wars, which is great, and especially with Han Solo's character. And then the casting choice of Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian just like sealed the deal for me. Like, I'm all on board for that movie.
Yeah, it's great casting. I was so happy when I found that out. And like I said, I'm not even a Childish Gambino fan, but it's just really good, really good casting.
I'm a Donald Glover fan. I don't like his music very much, but at all. But I'm a Donald Glover fan. I've been watching him since before. A hipster moment here. Like, I've been watching him since he was on his sketch comedy. Like internet, he was like a YouTube sketch comedy performer.
All right.
With a group called Derek Comedy, and that's like where he got his start. And it's like they were in high school and they were just like making dumb videos online. And like I've been a fan since back then. So. Well,
I've been watching him since he was Billy D. Williams, pal. So.
I've been watching him since he was in utero. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of, I've kind of lost touch with a bit of music. I was so into music. I had a band that I played in. We that sounds too professional. I had a band that we started and we had started to write music for, and then we never ended up doing our first gig, and it fell apart because our lead guitarist moved away for school, and then we kind of all dissipated. But like I was really into music. I played guitar and I did vocals, and I was so involved in just like listening to music and finding music and researching music. Actually, the person who would have been really good for this segment of the podcast is Justine, because Justine knows stuff about music that I don't even know where she gets this stuff. Like she finds out things.
Yeah, the time
it's kind of the way that we talk about video games.
Yeah.
She just pulls this shit out of like thin air and starts talking about it.
When I found out that she was an Our Lady Peace fan, that pretty much solidified this collaborative partnership that we have developed.
No, absolutely. She kept laughing about it afterwards, and she said, like, I can't believe he listens to Our Lady Peace. That's so funny.
It is,
and that your favorite album is our favorite album as well.
It's I can't express to you how difficult it is as well to be an Our Lady Peace fan over here, because nobody knows who they are, and I don't know. I guess my last thing I'll say about music is 2 albums. One is Biffy Clyro's Ellipsis, which you probably don't know who Biffy Clyro are. I don't think they're not really big in North America as far as I know. They have had some hits over there, I think, but not majorly. They're great. They're such a weird band, and they sound different from album to album, but they really hit their peak there a few years ago. But I went to see them last month, I think, and they were phenomenal. Such a great live band, and I had such a good time. And the new album's really good. There's about like 7 songs on there that could all be hits. And for a band reaching this is like their 7th album, so like that's some pretty good going from them.
Yeah.
And finally, California, Blink-182. They have returned with an album, and they ditched Tom DeLonge in favor of Matt Skiba from Alkaline Trio. And I really used to like Alkaline Trio when I was growing up. For a while there, Private Eye by them was like my favorite song. But I even met Dan Adriano from Alkaline Trio in Dublin in like 2012. I have his guitar pick, somewhere in this room.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, they got rid of Tom, who I think was probably the most creative force within the band, but was probably the most destructive force too, because he just didn't want to be in the band and didn't want to have anything to do with it, or wanted it all on his own terms. And I don't think Blink-182 have ever been a particularly amazing band or anything, but I think it's mostly a nostalgia factor for me that keeps me coming back to them. But I'm just not willing to let go of their self-titled album because of the profound impact it had on my development as a child. So shout out to Blink-182 for coming back and making an album that was not really that good, but was perfectly listenable in every way, just not quite Tom DeLonge Blink-182. So
yeah, I've been so out of it with music that I really wish I need to devote some time to it now in the summer. I think I'll take some time to just explore music again. But I find like my music tastes are they're pretty selective in terms of what I like and what I like listening to, that I end up just finding things that are similar but different to things that I'm already listening to, and kind of deviating in that way. And a lot of the time that means that I find a band from like 6 years ago that maybe isn't necessarily together anymore, and they only put out 2 albums, and I'm like, man, that stuff is really awesome. Like, I don't know if they're still together, but like a while ago I was looking at music and I found the Black Box Revelation. Really interesting band. I don't remember where they're from. They're Finnish, I think.
All right, I've never even heard of them.
Yeah, they have a really awesome single, Lust or Love, that's like totally kick-ass song. Really, really awesome. And it had come out like way before, and it's just like something that I missed when I was listening to something else. So I don't necessarily, unless it's a band that I religiously follow. Like, my favorite band is Black Rebel Motorcycle Club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love those guys. I've seen them twice live now.
Nice.
Shook Peter Hayes' hand and told him he had a great gig.
Nice.
Yeah, made eye contact with him, melted a little bit. No, they're such a kick-ass band. The first time I went to see them, they literally played until their fingers bled and they couldn't play anymore.
Nice.
And especially, I love their drummer, Leah Shapiro. She wasn't the original drummer, but when she joined the band, like, I think they started doing some really interesting new stuff, and she's just such a different style of drummer. She has just slightly off timing on purpose, and it's like it gives them a very interesting sound that I really appreciate. So they haven't released a new album this year, but I think they announced that they are recording stuff for a new album. So I guess that counts as good news for music from 2016.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So like that kind of stuff where, I'll if I'm really following the band, like I follow Radiohead, or like I follow Black Rebel, or the Black Angels. I find apparently a lot of the bands that I like have the word black in them.
Black Label
it just
Society,
happens.
Black Stone Cherry, Black Lab. I think Black Lab are Canadian. I'm not too sure.
Oh, you know what Justine got me into this year? Temples. They have a very 60s revival kind of sound, like authentic 60s though, like really, really interesting, early Beatles-ish kind of, not early, like I guess leaning almost around Revolver maybe.
Okay, the
I don't know,
Beatles album, maybe
the best Beatles album maybe. Yeah, they've got a really cool sound, and I lean a little bit more towards like the psychedelic garage rock kind of vibe. But I mean, that's just to, we've spread the taste. You suggested a lot of like hip hop and rap and like more like that side of music, and like I'm very much on like the other side of stuff, but like I really appreciate music from everywhere, and I think 2016 regardless was a great year for music, because as long as you're out there discovering new music and enjoying it and playing games while you're listening to it, or just sitting down and like having a drink while you listen to the album, then I think you're doing it right.
Also, rediscovering old music. Because in 2016 we saw the documentary Supersonic about Oasis, and it just made me tremendously happy, and I fucking love Oasis. And like, I people who are crazy into music don't ever take that seriously because they think Oasis are the worst and it's the same 3 chords in every song and stuff like that. But they hold a special place in not only my heart, but I think in like the legacy of British rock and roll. I think Oasis will go down as like the last great rock and roll band. And you can say I'm using the term great lightly, but 70 million records.
It's sad
sold.
because Arctic Monkeys had the chance, and they've just. We were talking earlier about bands who changed their sound, and they're just not the same anymore. Like I feel like Arctic Monkeys put out 2 ridiculously solid albums that started, and they're such performers. I saw them live when their for their 3rd album, which was like kind of like the beginning of the end for me as a listener. Anyway,
I wasn't crazy about it.
Yeah, it got like weird and dark and it was missing the kind of like bon vivant that their first 2 albums had, like.
Yeah, I'm gonna start a music podcast soon, which I hate.
Talk to Justine about that shit.
Yeah, I know. Well, I hate like saying things like this because I have a horrible reputation for not following through with things, and I think it's because I don't follow through with things. I think that's where the reputation comes from, but
that can't be it.
Yeah, I think it's slander, but I want to call it noise pollution. I have the image, like the thumbnail and the font and all mapped out in my head, and I know how it's going to sound and I know what it's going to be like. But I want the first episode to be about Oasis because I feel like the narrative has already been set for them, that they had 2 great albums, then they fell apart, and then they were garbage after, and all this stuff. And like, I disagree with most of what people think about them and what led to their implosion and their downfall and stuff. And I have so much to say about it, so I figure, fuck it, I'll put it into a podcast. And
yeah, why not?
As we just discussed, like I have a lot to say about music, so I think there are a lot of other bands I could talk in detail about. So that's
I was never huge into Oasis, but like I really like the kind of Brit pop, I guess, genre. That's what we call it over here.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that
that's
is what like that is like a blanket term that was applied to pretty much any.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Australian bands piggybacked off of that, and they're still producing a lot of that kind of sound. Like I know when the Vines first came out, I loved the Vines. They fell apart for health reasons. But man, their first 2 albums, they had such a weird mix of that, like again, like 60s revival, psychedelia, and then also like Britpop, and then like really like grungy, like almost screamo.
Yeah.
Like it was such an interesting blend, and it was so not original, but also original in that unoriginality.
Yeah, I know, but that's what Oasis did too. Like really.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the Vines like breakthrough song?
Get Free, probably.
Yes, that's it.
And Out of the Way.
Yeah. Get Free was on like every advert and stuff like that. Like it was really put out there. I remember that.
Yeah. Those first 2 albums, like say what you want, but like, man, those first 2 albums kick ass. They rock.
Yeah.
Like what a rocking band. And then they transition so seamlessly from that into like really slow songs, right? Like Homesick.
There's something in that. And Arctic Monkeys did it too, and
Mm-hmm.
these bands did that for a reason, and that's what I want to talk about in my Oasis thing, is that the sound that Oasis made was consistent throughout their career. And like they did do experiments, they did verge into other realms that were not really noticed because by that point they had escaped the public eye so much. But
Yeah.
there's a reason that bands don't stick to that rock and roll sound. And if you look at even like Linkin Park, who are one of the highest selling bands in the history of music. Yeah. And then they changed into this really melodic, like perfect harmonies and like just really sort of a more songy type band. Coldplay did it too, like you referenced earlier. Like they were never a hard band per se, but they totally evolved into a huge, like soaring sort of anthemic type band. And there's a reason that bands do that, and it's that rock and roll music doesn't hold up for that long, anymore. People don't like rock and roll music anymore. There's not
Which
really,
is sad, I think.
Yeah,
I think like
so
there's
too.
ways of doing it right, and I think unfortunately, and it does again sound like kind of a hipster thing, but like the bands that do it well are sometimes bands that aren't necessarily like so much in like the public sphere, you know, like they're bands like like Black Rebel Motorcycle Club.
Yeah.
They're smaller bands who spend all of the money that they make touring on making the next album and then couch surf, and then like, can it get more rock and roll than that? In a way, it's almost a good thing that rock and roll isn't huge anymore, because it means that there's a lot less bullshit in that genre, because rock and roll had a spirit to it that I think got consumed by consumerism,
Yeah, I agree.
And so, like, sometimes the stuff that you find now is coming from a place of more authenticity. But I mean, there's also really interesting stuff. Like, I think that the first, I'm going to say the first 3.5. Oh my God, what am I saying here? Oh my God, what is the name of that band? Kasabian.
Oh yeah, Kasabian.
The first 3 Kasabian albums are freaking awesome, and then Velociraptor is where they sort of started losing me a little bit.
Yeah, Velociraptor is garbage.
I think there's really good songs in Velociraptor, but they're kind of sandwiched in between other songs that aren't necessarily good.
Yeah, they're a
which is stupid
band.
Because what was the album before that? West Rider Pauper Lunatic Asylum.
That's their best effort.
Holy shit! You want to talk about like an album that's like a unified concept? Like, you know the story behind that album?
Yes, I do. And did you know that it's got
So
Rosario
badass.
Dawson on it? Like,
I didn't know that it has Rosario Dawson on it.
Yeah, she's the woman that talks about the treatment or in
Yeah.
Rider. Yeah, like she. Yeah.
I think that might be the title track, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But Thick as Thieves on that is like, it's like Serge like channeling the Beatles in some way. But
Where Has All the Love Gone?
Yeah, that's such an Oasis
that whole
song.
album is such a freaking phenomenal album.
Yeah, it's really good.
And I mean, just like really quickly, we referenced how awesome the concept was, and then didn't say what it was. They went to like an old lunatic asylum, and they read up on the stories and the history of everybody who was there, and they created music based on like the kind of psychological profiles of like these old kind of like inmates.
Yeah, and that's the most creative they've ever gotten as a band, because I think they really fell down after that.
You know what Justine's theory is that musicians are excellent until they get married and have children.
I think humans are excellent until they get married and have children. That's a thing I could talk about at length as well, is how, yeah, I won't get into it now. It's for another podcast. But I think we should call it a night. Yeah,
it just went a lot later than I thought. But
yeah,
hey, 2016, what a year. There was some bad stuff, but there was a lot of good stuff, and there was a lot of awesome, entertaining things that we just spent quite a while talking about for your enjoyment.
Yeah, and it's just really good that we could give something back to you after we have taken so much.
We are 2016.
Yeah, and we have taken all your loved ones.
Oh, no. We're like the Krampus. We just put them in a basket and drowned them in a lake.
We've taken some of your loved ones. I think that's fair to say. But here's to no deaths in 2017.
Yeah. Just like it's going to be like the 1 year in history where absolutely nobody died, and we're going to have a food shortage.
Planetary overpopulation in 2017, where the only thing that will die will be the planet itself.
Oh, what a happy note to end things on.
Good night, everyone.
Farewell. By the way, this is the last episode.
Yeah.
No, I honestly think like a lot of awesome stuff happened in 2016, from video games to movies to music and everything in between, and if you're out there and, like I said earlier, had an amazing 2016, don't let people make you feel like garbage for saying that 2016 was a great year, because even though we lost people like Bowie and Alan Rickman and recently Carrie Fisher and and other people who were really important in our lives growing up and who influenced a lot, like a lot of excellent things happened, and we have to remember that as well.
Yeah, and it's a great note to end on for both the year and the podcast.
It's been an okay year.
Yeah, I mean, in the right context, it was a great year, and in a really negative one, it was, a sad year, but you just got to look at the positive, folks.
You got to remember that in 2015, there was a person whose entire family died in a horrible, tragic accident, And for that person, 2015 was the worst year, and maybe 2016 was nice.
Yeah.
So that's like a kind of like sour, weird, feel good because someone else had a worse year last year. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But you know what
compare your unhappiness to the unhappiness of someone much more unhappy than you.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a year, and bad stuff and good stuff happen all the time. You know, it's just what we pay attention to, and I think we need to pay attention to both to approve. You can't have one without the other.
She insists that she's a lunatic, closer to the bone. She hardly ever visits upstairs, would rather telephone. Well, I guess beauty does what beauty does best. It's beautiful. Says that's the trouble with reality. It's taken far too seriously. I do hope God is good to me and Santa Claus for the children celebrate. This party's over, I'm going home to celebrate. This party's over, I'm going home.
So there you have it, folks. It turns out it was 2016 all along. All this time, it has been 2016. Crazy. But that's the end of the episode. We're closing out with a song called Celebrate by a band called An Emotional Fish, which is a terrible, terrible name for an album, and presumably the reason why they never had any other hits apart from that song. But they're an Irish band, and it is a pretty cool song. And you know what? It's saying this party's over, I'm going home, and that's how I feel about the year 2016 and the podcast itself. So that's how we bring the episode to a close. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did and you'd consider leaving a like, I would really appreciate it, and I will even pay you to do it. Just leave your PayPal in the description. That's not going to happen, but seriously, your support is very much appreciated, and I think the last 2-3 months we've been on fire with the podcast. I know we missed 2 weeks, but I was in Southeast Asia. What are you going to do? But we've made some great episodes. We've had some great guests on. I think it's been the most diverse year for the Midnight Hour in terms of the range of topics that we covered and the different types of guests we had, like the different people, the new people that came on. So I'm really, really proud with the podcast this year, and I think it's my crowning achievement of 2016. And I think even if the year was terrible in every other way, you know that you can count on the Midnight Hour to semi-regularly upload, you know, stuff that you may listen to at some point or another, and that is not nothing. I'm signing off with that because it's terrible and cheesy and awful, and you know, it ruins the whole podcast. So I hope you guys have had a really good 2016. I hope you have an even better 2017, and I will see you next week. Peace.